All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 16th Litchfield Budget Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and tonight we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Before we jump in tonight, I just want to quickly publicly say thank you to Ms. Stevens for chairing the last couple of meetings while I was out sick and out dealing with some family issues. So I appreciate her stepping up and chairing the last couple of meetings. Next on our agenda, we have any review or additions to tonight's agenda. Anyone have anything to add or change? All right, seeing none, we also need to have a motion to allow for remote participation.
So made.
A motion by Mr. Leary, second by Ms. Stevens. We'll do all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain. Motion carries 8-0-0. Mr. Hayes, if you want to let us know your reason for being remote tonight and if anyone's in the room with you.
I am sick and I'm alone because no one wants to be near me.
Good answer,
What
sir.
else is good?
I hope you get to feeling better, Mr. Hayes.
So thank you.
All right, so from this point forward, if we have any votes, we'll do a roll call vote this evening. Next on our agenda is public input. So we'll open it up for any members of the public for public input tonight. If you could just state your name and address for the record, please.
Certainly. I'm Vicki Barrett, 23 Brighton Street.
Hey, good evening.
Donna Ferguson, 1 Martin Lane.
Perfect.
Okay, so we're here tonight to address the cuts that were made at the October 19th budget meeting. I wasn't able to come to the next meeting as I was out of town, so. At that meeting, $6,550 was removed from the library's 2024 proposed budget. During the discussion on the reduction proposed by Mr. Taylor, Ms. Douglas suggested that the $6,550 could come out of the insurance buyout, which is an employee benefit. Mr. Taylor went on to note that the 2023 budget was only 68% spent as of mid-September, and listed the electricity, equipment maintenance contracts, community programs, and library supplies lines as places where reductions could also be made. Ms. Douglas's suggestion to reduce the employee benefit by 60% for only one budget among many in the overall town budget is, in my opinion, grossly unfair. As for the other areas of the budget suggested for reduction, I would like to remind the committee that the library's budget is not spent evenly throughout the year. I'd like to remind them that many large ticket items are due in December. I'd like to remind them, due to the summer reading challenge, ordering and other projects do not take place from June through mid-August. Therefore, the final quarter expenditures are traditionally heavier than others. For example, as of 9/12/23, the year-to-date expenditures in the equipment maintenance contracts line did not yet include the upcoming fall gutter cleaning, fall lift maintenance, fall furnace maintenance, fall pest control, nor did it include the final 4 months of copier maintenance. The same type of example can be given for the other line items specifically mentioned by Mr. Taylor, and still others in the budget, except for electricity. There we agree. The 2023 electricity budget was developed based on Eversource's rate increase and will in fact be underspent this year. The library's budget increase as it was presented comes almost entirely from increases to the cost of goods and services and not to new items that could be defined as wants rather than needs. A reduction of $6,550 can only come from library services, namely library materials, both physical and digital, and library programs. This amount represents 30% of those two lines. The new titles residents ask for that we won't be able to purchase can't be requested from other libraries for up to a year through interlibrary loan. and our residents are asking for more programs, not less. This reduction will greatly be felt by the community, both young and old. In 2022, the taxpayer investment of $300,177 weighed against the cost for residents to purchase the items and services that were provided to them at a cost of $495,762, resulted in a 164% return on investment. The Library Board of Trustees and I ask that, based on the information I've just provided, that you reconsider the $6,550 removal from the library budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett.
I'd just like to make clarification. I mentioned the library directly because the Board of Selectmen does not have purview over you. Oh, I've very much stated that town-wide, I think the entire buyout needs to be addressed. So I was not targeting just the library. I believe town-wide it needs to be addressed. So you mentioned that.
But that's easy to pick out of our budget because it's not part of the larger budget.
But I can't, the Board of Selectmen cannot tell you to do that. The Budget Committee
They
has to.
can't.
No, the Budget Committee would have to. I absolutely have said to the Board of Selectmen that I expect a review of the town-wide buyout. So the comment, no, I'm just saying that the comment that I unfairly targeted the library, I think is inaccurate, because I have absolutely discussed that town-wide.
Well, as you like
don't-
to say,
we
agree
don't
to
have-
disagree.
We don't have to go back and forth tonight. We appreciate you all coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. And certainly, for your awareness, there is always an opportunity for us to revisit the budget between now and town meeting. And certainly, at that point in time, too, those additions can be made from the floor as well. So, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment, public input this evening? Okay. Next on our agenda, we have correspondence. So I will, thanks to Ms. Stevens for putting this together, and I'll quickly highlight our correspondence since the last time we met, which was on October 26th, the last time that this group formally met. On October 26th, School District Business Administrator Doug Totten shared the 24-25 superintendent's budget. He noted significant increases to the transportation contract, special education requirements, and potential health changes. He highlighted that the fiscal year 23 approved budget column included numbers from the voter-approved budget, voter-approved warrant articles, board-approved encumbrances, and a transfer for an increase in food service non-union salaries. He included a table to identify the differences. Also on that date, School Board Rep Andrew Cutter forwarded the School District 23-24 student enrollment number and projections, and Chairman Sun sent a reminder of the upcoming meeting schedule. On October 31st, Recording Secretary Matt Sullivan shared the October 26 meeting minutes. On November 2nd, IT Director John Burnell sent the committee a video of the information sign newly installed at the town transfer station. He noted it is updated regularly and cycles through notices. Also on the same date, Chairman Sun reminded the committee to send any question for the school district to him. On November 10th, Chairman Sun shared the draft agenda for the November 16th meeting. He included video links for the joint School Board Budget Committee meetings on November 2nd and 7th and the School Board meeting on November 8th. On November 11th, Mr. Cutter forwarded his district budget Excel workbook to aid in the committee's budget review. On November 15th, Mr. Cutter shared the November 15th BA report. And then on November 16th, Mr. Totten shared the school board budget as approved on November 15th. And that is our correspondence, minus a few items I did share within the last hour with the committee just in preparation for tonight's meeting. All right, next we have review and acceptance of minutes from October 26th. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those?
Make a motion to accept as written.
A motion from Mr. Burke. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Douglas. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Cutter.
Aye.
Mr. Leary.
Aye.
Ms. Douglas.
Aye.
I'm an aye. Ms. Stevens.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor. Aye. Mr. Barca.
Aye.
Mr. Burke.
Aye.
And Mr. Hayes.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 9-0-0. Before we jump into kind of the main purpose of our evening tonight, we do have we're going to do a quick town business. We have a couple of guests here. Ms. Kleiner and Mr. Mellon had asked to come and talk about, as a follow-up from the last time we met, the recycling revolving fund. There were some questions that evening, so they asked to come and share. So I'll invite you all up. I also shared with the committee earlier today an email from Ms. Kleiner that had an attachment, and it highlighted just a second as I pull that up. It highlighted the warrant article that established the recycling revolving fund, and then it also below that had the 2022 beginning and ending balance and the 2023 beginning and ending balance. Ms. Kleiner, it says ending balance is as of 10/30/24. I'm assuming that's supposed to be 10/30/23, right?
You are correct.
Thanks. So with that, I didn't know, well, I'll open the floor, Ms. Kleiner, Mr. Mellon, to you all if there's anything you wanted to say or add, and then certainly we can open it up to any questions.
We'd just like to add, so the reason that we provided the warrant article is I think this fund is treated specifically different than other funds. It's pretty clear from the language in the warrant article that this was meant to accumulate funds from year to year to be spent for what is sometimes a very volatile commodity such as recycling. So recycling goes up and recycling goes down. And Mr. Mellon can speak to just how that works and how often it fluctuates. But it was not intended at any time for it to be used to offset the expenses in the general operating budget. So, Mr. Mellon and I looked through the budget to see, are any of those line items specific to the recycling? And we've outlined one that was still in the budget for $800 that we believe, yes, could absolutely be moved to the revolving fund. But other than that, most of it is pretty general related and not specific to recycling itself. Having said that, some of the expenses that you see that are contributed directly to the recycling center, like when there's a backhoe repair for the backhoe that's used specifically for that purpose, that revolving fund is hit for that expense. There are some, and I'll be honest, back in 2022, I wasn't here, so I can only speak to those some of those expenses, generally from what I've been told and what Mr. Mellon may know. The 2023 expenses, those are directly related to the recycling center and the work that is done within the center itself. So I'd ask Mr. Mellon to kind of talk about how volatile the fund fluctuates and what the expenses are for recycling.
Okay, what we get paid for recycling, we get paid for scrap metal, which pays very well. Pays $133 a gross ton. It's been pretty steady all year at that level. We make money on our aluminum cans. This year I sent a truckload of aluminum cans out. It was 51 cents. It's aluminum, non-ferrous metals are sold by the pound. It was sold for 51 cents a pound. Last year, I got $1.07 per pound, got almost $14,000 for the same truckload. Now I have another load of aluminum cans sitting on the property now. I put it in the marketplace to see who's gonna bid on it, and we go through the co-op, and they place bids, and we take the highest bidder on that. Or we can hold it if the price is not reasonable, and we have done that before. If it's ridiculous, we wait till the spring because we have the option of holding it. OCC cardboard has always been in the plus. It's been at the lower level since the pandemic. It's been around $40, and that's sold by the standard ton. Recently, I got an update on what's called the yellow sheet. And OCC has been bumped up to $80 a standard ton, which is excellent. I mean, it's a good hit. Mixed fibers, which is the paper and the paper board and that type of product that goes down the recycling chute in the room. That was paying a negative, we were paying for that. That was a negative 65 ever since the pandemic. And that goes out once every 2 weeks. So that was going through Recycling Associates with our other fibers. So we were using the cardboard and the fibers were, offsetting each other. On the yellow sheet that I got the other day, the mixed fibers went up to a plus $5 a standard ton, so it's back in the positive. How long, I don't know. As far as electronics, we pay for our electronics. I use a company out of Goffstown that does take other material such as, they do take non-ferrous, we take our copper, they take our copper, which helps offset the price of recycling the TV sets and the electronics. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but we cut all the wires off of everything that comes in, all the electronics, and we box it all up. It goes in a Gaylord, and that pays very well. We get about $400 per Gaylord, and that goes out and actually helps pay for the TVs and the electronics that do cost money to recycle. And wet cell batteries too, they do accept the wet cell batteries there too. That also goes out to Goffstown also in the electronics. We do pay through the revolving fund, we do pay for used motor oil now, where years ago we didn't. We got money for it. Now we're paying $800 every time they come. And they come 4 times a year. So that's money that comes out of the revolving fund. We pay for fluorescent light bulbs, the CFLs, the small ones. They're 48 cents a piece to recycle them. We took in about 5,000 of them last year. Freon off the refrigerators, we have to pay a contractor to come in and drain the refrigerators. That also, it comes out of the revolving fund.
That one we charge for though, don't we?
It is charged for, yeah.
The other ones we don't, but that one.
Yeah, that one we do get a user fee for. You're correct.
How much is the fee?
What's that?
What's the fee?
10.
$10.
Yeah.
How much does it cost to drain it?
It depends, but it's usually around $9.
Break even, okay.
And the same with the tires. We do get a user fee for tires, but we're on the low end of that. We get $3. They're charging me $3.50. Let's see, what am I missing?
I think that's very helpful. I think unless you all have.
If any
Yeah, I was gonna open
questions?
it up for questions, kind of based on the last conversation that we had a few weeks ago about this.
I
Questions
guess my
for,
question would be on, why would 630 not qualify?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Section 630, equipment repair and maintenance. I mean, we can't do recycling without things like compactors, balers.
you're talking about in the budget, right?
Yeah, like, why is that 5250 considered to be off limits when it comes to the warrant and that fund?
So how much of your equipment repair line, would be dedicated to compactors and things that are directly used for recycling?
Well, that's pretty much a preventive maintenance line item.
Right.
Right.
But it's related to I mean, you use that equipment for recycling.
Yeah,
Do you not?
absolutely. Some of it, we do, some of the balers we do.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. That's
So
correct.
then why would that not qualify as being something in addition to the $800 then?
So if you if you estimated out exactly how much of the preventative maintenance is related to the gaylords and the bailiffs that are recycling, you could probably apportion.
You also have the
That way.
backhoe, the forklift.
No, those charges hit the backhoe, anything that's done to the backhoe and that's what you see in the backhoe line, that is directly,
That's
related to the recycling.
Yeah.
That's, the difference is, I think, when the backhoe hits, it's because it's down and broken versus preventative maintenance, right? Is that a true
Well,
statement or no?
the backhoe's a new piece of equipment to my facility, because it's
An old one.
It's the old one, and there's not a line item to repair it.
Didn't this stem from the sign?
Yes.
Isn't this where the monies came out of this fund for the sign?
That's where the
correct.
So I
conversation
just,
started.
because I didn't see the warrant article, because when you mentioned, I was just reading it. I don't understand where something like a sign says to see if the town will vote to establish a revolving fund pursuant to RSA, blah, 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 for the purchase of accounting for the cost of collection and disposal of recycling material, purchase of recycling supplies, equipment, and other direct and indirect costs associated with the town's recycling program. I don't understand where a sign would fall into that category. And that's where this whole thing stemmed from.
You're correct. So there are laws that require the recycling center itself to have signage. And that signage is generally to update the general public on a variety of different things. So because the recycling center needs signage upon the building, it's supposed to educate the residents. We used the revolving fund
Okay.
for that
So
expense.
there's an RSA as far as signage.
There's a law requiring
that the
signage
town-
upon the
That the
recycling,
town needs to adhere to.
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And
But
there
it
are
shouldn't have
two
come,
more.
it shouldn't have come from that fund. So if, that's the way I'm reading the RSA. I mean, I could be incorrect. I'm not a lawyer. But in reading it, that money should not have come out of that fund. So going back to what Mr. Taylor was saying, I think that all repairs and everything else, all that machinery is used for recycling. So why wouldn't it fall into that fund?
We could certainly look at exactly how much of your equipment, Dave, is used.
I would say
Exactly for-
every single piece of equipment there is for recycling. In some shape or form,
Not everything, no.
okay?
No,
Well, then
con- the con-
by
the-
that, then you know what, you can't put, well, check out
Can't-
the
the
town Facebook webpage on the sign then. If everything needs to be specifically to the recycling portion of it, and you post something up on that sign that's not related, then why can't I take all of the equipment repair and maintenance line and apply that to the revolving fund? Like, it's very confusing that we're going to nitpick equipment and how many hours get used for picking up recycling versus other things, but the sign, which is more than what the town needed in order to meet the law, then has information on it that's not about the town recycling. You can't have it both ways.
Right, but you also, so what you're talking about is you're talking about charging a budget item line to the fund. The sign wasn't purchased and wasn't estimated to come out of this fund until we knew where the fund stood, right? Dave receives a yellow sheet every month. We don't know what this market's going to be. So if we were to say that in October, we're gonna look to see what funds are left in the revolving fund and make a charge for some of the equipment portion, I think we're feeling a little bit better there. But if you pass a budget that doesn't have $10,000 or $5,000 in an equipment repair line, right, it's not there.
So,
If the recycling rates go skyrocket and we're in a bad way,
But I guess
Where
we
are we
could say
gonna
that
get
about anything. You know what? All of a sudden, gasoline could go to $6 a gallon, and something's going to happen. It's just it's frustrating that it seems like we pick and choose in terms of when we're going to go ahead and follow the letter of the law. A couple of years ago, you know what? There was conversations about the school using certain funds, and some people agreed with it and some people didn't. It's just, at some point, it just feels like the taxpayer never wins in the situation. It's almost like the town and the school are the house at the casino, and you just can't beat them, because every single time you try to ask for something fair, in terms of an interpretation, it always goes towards government. And that's my issue with it, is just, you know what? I can't imagine that $5,000 in a fund that has $50,000 in it is going to all of a sudden turn so far upside down that the town isn't gonna be able to put money into it.
Then I'd go back to 2022. So 2022, the bathroom was remodeled. It had black mold. The
Yep.
toilets didn't flush. The pipes were frozen. It was a health issue.
Right.
Where
But
would they have gotten that money?
Well, but I'm not asking on that particular part.
Services
I didn't ask about, you know, general supplies and replacement of
have it.
things. This specifically has, I don't see anything about a bathroom. I see annual preventative maintenance on 4 items: compactors, balers, overhead doors, skid steer. And then repairs on a power washer in addition. I don't see anything there in terms of that particular example.
So maybe what we need is a clear policy as to what goes in and doesn't, so there's no questions, like, why is this in and this isn't? Like a
Isn't that
solid,
what the warrant article?
not really, because here you could
Warrant article
say,
says it's for recycling.
because I could say, well, if this is the case, why fences? Fences also go against highway department, right? Do we apportion what percentage goes to the, like, what goes in and out? So like, if it's supposed to be to offset increases in recycling, then it should only be used for increases in recycling. Why
Right,
are we
but
dipping into it?
It's being used for other things.
But the thing, well, like, it becomes, for want of a, no, I guess there's no better word, then has the perception of a slush fund. And since I rail against slush funds in the school, yeah, it kind of starts to feel like that over here. So if there was a very clear, like, only for recycling increases, okay, fine, and it's only for recycling increases, then we have to talk about where we're gonna fund these other things.
Well, it's not for recycling increases, it's for costs associated with recycling.
Well, I'm saying if we had somebody who clearly denoted, like a chart, if it does this, then it goes in. If it doesn't, then, go around the logic chart. I don't know. But make it a very clear flow chart as to what goes in and what doesn't. And then we don't have this discussion of, well, I think it should be charged, well, I don't.
When was
What's
this
the
fund
decision tree?
established?
I think
Yeah.
around 2008.
Around what?
2008.
2008. And do
No,
we know-
2016. Estimated 2016 tax
Yeah.
rate impact.
And do we know,
So,
do you have a yearly, like, what that fund had in it every year?
Yes, we can get that, yeah.
Okay.
I'll pull that.
And could you also share the RSA that you referred to earlier? Just as a
Well, I mean, it looks like in
follow-up.
2022, they deposited $83,000. In 2023, so far, 41,000. So it's right there, it deposits.
So if I can just add one other thing, because Ms. Kleiner, like you said, I mean, we need a sign, we talked about communication, and Mr. Brunel, like, sent us something also as far as, the town looking for more means of communication. I get that. But I'll just point out the sign we have out front here, that the last holiday, it remained on there that the town hall is gonna be closed. It remained for 2 or 3 weeks. It's been down now for like maybe 4 weeks, and that sign is blank. The opposite side has, we're hiring police officers, and I understand that's important, but that's been on there for months. And like anything else in marketing, when you have something that's up there for a long period of time, it's just stale. People just don't even pay attention to it. But we have a marquee sign out there that we don't utilize. Yeah, we spent $16,000 from a fund I don't think we should have spent for a sign at the recycling center.
Any other questions for Ms. Kleiner or Mr. Mellon this evening?
Can I just say something? So The warrant article does say indirect costs associated with the town's recycling program. And I would absolutely argue that a usable bathroom and fences and fridge and everything were indirect costs necessary for the recycling program, because we have people that work in that area and they should be taken care of.
I agree with that.
I can see where there's some dispute that we are putting regular maintenance into the budget and then using this fund for maybe those extra costs
Maintenance costs, yeah.
that might have been seen in the budget. Like, other departments put these remodels into the budget and then they're up for discussion with the budget committee. So maybe that's just some feedback for the Board of Selectmen, and for your decisions, but I wouldn't say that any of the uses that you've used the fund for so far are not valid.
But again, that's a personal opinion, right? So that's, so.
Any other comments, thoughts, questions?
I guess just one last thing, based on what Ms. Stevens just said, those items have been used, those should be coming out of 430. So why can't we put 430 and 630?
No, I understand.
Into it as well.
I understand the dispute about what should be in the budget and what should be used for this fund, because it kind of feels like the fund is being used for things that now the budget committee isn't reviewing those, when we have to review them for other departments. But I just wanted to debate the insinuation that any of these uses were not valid for the fund. I don't think that they acted poorly.
I think the question is whether they should be in the budget or not.
Right.
So, you said you're gonna share the law as well as the additional year's balance of those funds, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
From
Thank you, ma'am.
2016 on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Kleiner. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, let's just quickly, since we're in the mode of town business, before we completely switch gears to the school, Mr. Leary, town updates, and then we'll invite Mr. Todd and Dr. Jetty up if you all want to come up front while he's sharing.
Town updates, there's not really a lot. The Veterans Park is coming along nicely out there. If anybody hasn't seen it, the benches are in. They look really nice. The pavilion's supposed to be dropped off soon. The date for dedicating it to the town is now in the spring. There was a delay because they had moved the site a little bit, so it had to go back before the selectmen and the planning board for approval again, so it kind of pushed it back, so the building didn't get here in time to do it for veterans. So, other than that, it's mostly been budget items. We're still trying to figure out where we're gonna find the money for things.
Questions from Mr. Leary on the town side?
Are they gonna be having additional lighting around the pavilion? No, I'm just wondering if there's gonna be additional lighting. I'm sure in the pavilion there'll be lighting. Is there gonna be any outside?
If there is, I think it was mentioned that it would be solar lighting and, yeah, so at no cost, it would just be.
Yeah, all right, because I didn't see them like running other piping.
There is conduit out there. There will be power at all the
At the
posts.
pavilion, right.
But that, and I think they talked about putting 3 big fans in there. Actually, we've got a local group that's coming in, I think maybe next week, to do some work there, that they're gonna be doing a ton of work around the pavilion.
I'll tell you, and I'm sure Continental is doing a lot of this.
Yeah.
And it's, I'll just say, it's phenomenal how much manpower they've already put into that thing. It's, I mean, 'cause I walk by it every day, like 2 or 3 times a day, and it's been like 2 weeks nonstop. There's like more machinery there and more men like doing work. It's like,
Trying to beat the frost.
Anything else from Mr. Leary? Okay. All right, we will switch gears to school business, and so tonight begins the budget committee's beginning the process of the school budget review. So just to kind of recap, thank you, John. Just to recap for those watching, for the community, up until this point, we have had 2 joint sessions. Those were led by the school board. Budget committee was invited to attend. Those were on November 2nd and November 7th. At those meetings, The principals and the department chairs were there, presented their budgets. School board members had opportunities to ask questions. Budget committee members had opportunities to ask questions. We also have a shared Google Doc that I have shared with everyone this evening. They're capturing questions that were asked outside of those meetings. So obviously tonight, as we go through any questions that we have, Mr. Totten and Dr. Jetty will be able to answer. If they aren't able to answer this evening, we'll capture those questions in that Google Doc for principals or department heads to answer in between now and our next meeting. So tonight brings us to our school budget review process. There is no voting tonight. Tonight is about us having the opportunity to continue to ask questions. We have had the budget now for about 3 weeks.
Have there been any changes to it?
There's in the email that I sent about an hour ago, there's a spreadsheet that Mr. Totten shared. It's titled Budget Changes. And so in that, you will see a tab that says SB Budget Changes. That's going to capture all of the actions that the school board took over their meetings on November 8th and November 15th. And that amount is totaled in cell D25. So that was the action of the school board. So just for point of clarification too, and building off of Ms. Douglas's comment, that those actions are not reflected in our paper copies, obviously, that we have. Mr. Totten did share earlier today a link that's posted on the district website that has the budget reflected of what the school board has taken action on. So that is out there and available. It is the full 116 pages, just like we have the paper version of. I was emailing with Mr. Totten earlier. He is going to have us, before our next meeting on the 30th, when we start voting, a breakdown of each of those individually. So we'll have a spreadsheet, we'll have a PDF for GMS, we'll have a PDF for CHS and LMS, et cetera, that will reflect all of the changes and the actions that the school board has taken.
Okay, so what I'm seeing then is, going into this right now, the request is 1.35 million higher than last year's, what I felt was excessive budget.
Currently, we are at an
awesome.
increase of 1.35 after the reductions that the school board took. That's correct.
Fantastic. This will be fun.
So, with that, that is a recap of kind of where we are, our process to this point, information that's available to you. The way we're going to flow tonight is we will go, if you go to the second page of our agenda, we're going to follow basically the order that was used at the fire station for those joint meetings. So we'll start with GMS. We'll go through the schools before we get into the departments. So we'll start with GMS. We'll open it up for questions that you have on the GMS budget. We'll let Mr. Totten and Dr. Jetty again answer any of those that we have tonight. If they're unable to do so, we'll capture those in the Google Docs and let Mr. Mitchell follow up with those. So starting with GMS, I don't know if you all, I know we're not sharing any slides or anything. I don't know if there's anything you all want to say to set the stage or about the budget in general or just anything around GMS as we kind of roll through these.
So I'll just make a couple of comments. First of all, thank you for the budget committee members who attended the meeting, and then I'm sure the rest of you are watching on TV, et cetera. So, it does streamline this process for us to present it once and have everybody participating right out of the gate. And I hope that, we met your expectations with getting the budget delivered to you in a timely manner so that you were able to follow along with us. The board has made changes, and in a second I'm going to ask Doug to do a quick summary of those, and then we're ready to answer questions that you have and answer anything that you want to know about the budget. We'll do our best to make sure that we have that. I do have slides relative to enrollment projections, all the things that were part of the slideshow. We can go back and refer to any of that if it's something that the budget committee is interested in seeing or hearing about again. So
before we get into it, can I just ask Mr. Totten a clarifying question? Because I know this budget changes sheet was just circulated this evening. The board hadn't seen that as of last night at our meeting. The FY24 budget at the top in cell K2, you have it listed at $24,183,028. You with me?
Yep.
Okay. In the budget, in the hard copy budgets that we have, it actually has the FY24 budget at $24,758,948.
Is that food service included in it?
No, it is not food service, so,
So that makes a difference on the 1.3, and I just want to make sure we're aligned on that
Do you know the answer to that?
FY '24 number. I want Mr. Totten's answer.
But you know, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure that, because if you're not getting it, then we got work to do. So I want to make sure.
so our goal has been to use, documents straight out of e-finance, not to manipulate the documents at all. So when I pulled over the budget and we started working on next year's fiscal year budget, it pulls over the encumbrances as well as the warrant articles that were voted on by the public. So that had increased the budget by about $578,000. $350,000 was the warrant articles that were passed. Other things were board-approved encumbrances, which were based mainly around safety, but were also about communication and things like that as well. So on your sheets, you can see in the changes in the budget segments, if you scroll down, I wanted to be very clear that what you see on the budget document, when it's relating like plus or minus from fiscal year '24, there is a discrepancy, and I wanted to tie it together for you from what was approved from warrant or encumbered. So that is why we truly do get that 1.3 million though, as well.
So, thank you for clarifying that. So just, maybe for my own, the 24.18 that you're referring to that's in cell K2, that's the amount that the voters approved last March.
That is, to me, apples to apples what we're talking about now. So voters approved last March. Part of Fund 10 became the 497 for the land, but that's not included in the 24,180 because to me, that's a one-time purchase.
Right.
So apples to apples, as you look at how does a school function on a yearly basis? I brought it down to what this was approved by the voters last year, that 24,180,000. And to me, that's the number that I compare it to whenever we go up or down.
And that includes pulling out the additional funding for the LMS project as well, because that was also a warrant article.
Yeah, so that was separated out in a different fund to start with.
It's in
Okay,
it.
so I'm just saying that the 24,180 does not include the additional funding that was added for the
That
LMS.
is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Cutter and Mr. Todd. Doug, any kind of anything else you want to add high level before we jump into GMS?
No, I just want to remind people that it is online, the budget's online. They can see the requested, which is what the school board started with, and they can now see the school board budget that was approved last night. So that's all online. I think it is definitely important that people have the documents so they can kind of compare and have an understanding, and then if they want to, show up to these meetings or the school board meetings to voice their approvals or concerns. So that's all there for people online, as well as there is some enrollment projections, because that's also important whenever you're talking about a school with enrollment going up or down,
So is
depending
that,
on.
I'm sorry, that's on the website as well?
Yes.
That's on the website as well. Yep.
Great. All right. So with that, let's jump into GMS. We will open it up for comments or questions from the budget committee about the GMS school board approved budget. And I'm not going to go page by page or line by line. We can just open it up in general. This is a budget that has not changed, I don't believe. No, I'm sorry, it has changed.
Has changed.
It was the furniture.
Furniture got reduced in half. It's going from 44 desks or 2 classrooms down to 1 classroom.
And that was, a reduction of $6,600.
Yeah, 6680.
So currently the GMS budget is up about $6,000 over last year.
In addition to that, on GMS, we did reduce the oil by $5,200.
So that would be, that ends up being reflected in the buildings and grounds, which is tied into GMS.
Questions around the GMS budget? Okay. I won't belabor.
all been answered at least.
Let's move to, next on the list is LMS. Questions on, questions on the LMS budget?
So LMS was also reduced in the furniture line, as well as a single ref contingency fee and the porta potty at LMS for the sports season.
So those reductions were 560, 800 in the furniture, so about $4,000 in reductions that the school board took, which has that budget up about $30,000 from last year, a little more than $30,000. Questions on LMS at this point in time?
Not currently, but I would encourage for all three schools, actually, looking at the various grant opportunities that are available for various enrichment opportunities, such as Lego and Coder Z and all those other opportunities. We are surrounded by quite a few tech companies that do support schools in those opportunities. And their grant application, from my understanding, isn't that complicated. I know our team was able to obtain one just by parents applying. I would think with the ability of some staff, hopefully, to put some time behind it with a little more experience, also ought to be able to achieve positive outcomes with grant applications in those areas. So just as we think about it, as we look at the increases we're seeing in our various budgets and what I've been hearing in the town, like, oh my gosh, I can't afford another major increase. So if we could start being creative in how we start exploring how we're gonna fund some of these things, I think that would go a long way to some of the taxpayers who really are struggling right now. I love the Lego program. I think, again, both my kids participate. But I think we need to start thinking about ways outside the box that we can fund these opportunities for our kids. I would just encourage us to look at grants a lot more aggressively.
Do you know how those parents found the grants budget?
A lot of them have ties to, say, BAE, but I'm sure we have a lot of people in town who work for similar companies that offer similar grants.
Okay.
And just in response to that, there's not a grant that comes our way that we aren't looking at. So when we're aware of those, we do take a look.
Other comments or questions on LMS? All right, we will move to CHS. Mr. Todd, I think we have a good flow going here. If you want to recap any changes for CHS that the school board may have made.
So it looks like CHS was reduced in 3 different spots. Naviance was purchased last year, so it didn't need to be purchased again this year because it's a 3-year license. The community graduate signs were cut in half to share it with the community, as well as the SAT school day test for juniors is paid by the state and not by the local.
Thank you for following up on that, because that was a question that came up.
So that was a reduction of about $4,500, if my math is correct. What was it?
$44.50.
Thank you. See, I rounded up, so. Which that shows an increase of about $12,000, a little less than $12,000 from last year's CHS budget.
So one thing I would have a question on is, as we've seen that the bus rates are increasing, say for field trips, are we increasing what we ask parents to contribute to those activities?
You're talking about like
Well, I see in here-
extracurriculars?
Well, I see in here just like field trips, right? I know that I had to cut a check at one point in time to GMS for a field trip, so it was partly offset by PTO at the time, but do we ask parents to contribute toward those?
I think it varies by the field trip. There are some that are curricular and would be covered by the budget. There are some that are not as tied to the curriculum, perhaps is the fairest way to say it, and then they are asked to contribute. So
I wrote one this
it's gonna
year for a
vary
field
by
trip.
the trip.
I'm gonna say, are they reflective of the current price that is being charged by the company itself?
Well,
Or is it the same amount that I paid 7 years ago?
So if we're charging,
Yeah.
then we're being responsive to either the ticket that we're buying to
Okay.
go to an event, but also the transportation
Okay.
cost, which has gone up. So I would say it's been adjusted to keep
Okay.
up. Because at the end of the day, you gotta pay for the trip.
And those are
right?
gonna go up next year with
Well, I just know that,
increased
like,
transportation costs.
again, it just comes down to the whole, I know that there's a lot of people struggling, so how can we at least ease that burden a little bit? So,
And I brought up, like, I mean, it's connected to this kind of parallel. I brought it up during the, I think it was the November 2nd meeting, about fees, right? And I think I mentioned it a couple of times, once with electives, or what I referred to as electives. And then it kind of trickled down all the way down to extracurriculars and athletics. And I think, the conversation was a good one around what's really considered an elective versus a graduation requirement. And then where are there opportunities to either insert fees or increase fees to help offset some of these costs? And perhaps it does make more sense with extracurriculars and athletics and things like that. Questions or comments around CHS's budget?
I have it written down here, and maybe this was already addressed, that they have budgeted for 2 classroom furniture replacement.
What page are you on? Or
Page
line
1.
item?
Page 1, line 737.
The movable, adaptable furniture, is that what you're referring to? Yep.
Was that because the furniture was in disrepair and it was necessary, or is that somewhere where they could match the other 2 schools and go to 1 classroom?
So I think it's a combo of both. I mean, the high school furniture, as people use it, stuff does go into disrepair. But it's not like a classroom goes out of order. It's that desk and that desk and that desk. So you scoop that up, and then the question is, are you gonna replace it with what was broken? In this case, they're really looking for more adaptive and collaborative furniture. So they're looking to scoop up the broken pieces and replace that with furniture that can be used for group collaboration. You're looking for stuff that's on wheels. You're looking for an ability to form little subgroups together. If you've been in the library recently, you'll see there's some pretty nice tables, and they're cut into odd shapes, or they look like they're odd shapes, but when you start to assemble them, you get these really nice 4 pods or 2 pods or 6 pods that you can create with those, which allow for that collaboration. And that's what the high school is trying to do with that one.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on the CHS budget? Mr. Hayes, I want to make sure you have an opportunity to ask any questions, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I'm all set.
Okay. All right. If nothing else for CHS, we will go to HR. This is not the salaries and benefits one. This is the HR budget, 2830 HR staff and services. Mr. Totten, the school board did not take any action on this, correct?
They did not take any action. And again, some of the HR is a smaller budget. Some of the changes were moving things over from the business budget to the HR budget in regards to time clock plus, which is how employees clock in and how we keep track of employees. It just made more sense in the HR budget. So obviously there was a decrease from the business budget from that and an increase in the HR budget.
Questions on the HR budget? Just showing an increase of $18,577, of which it looks like 13,000 of that is attributed to the software that Mr. Totten was just referring to.
And 5,000 recruiting.
What was that? Sorry.
It's like, I don't know if they had anything before, but
Oh, I see
there's
that.
$5,000 that's
Yeah.
for recruiting.
And that was a move from the SAU budget. So both things were sort of getting them into the HR realm.
I
So
think
the
we
increase-
did bump up recruiting though too, just because of how short-staffed we are. In the past, schools have gotten away with kind of using free ads. And that definitely works for teachers, for administration, but it's not gonna work the same way for a custodian who's looking for a job. They're not gonna go on a teacher site to find a position, or even for somebody who's working for part-time or assistant type of work. So kind of using other sites which have some pay to them as well. But when you get as short-staffed as we are, we gotta kind of be a little bit more creative.
should use a sign at the recycling center.
There you go.
But it doesn't fall in the RSA.
Any other,
Hiring everyone.
any other questions for the HR budget? All right, seeing none, we will go to food service. This is the, food service non-salary.
So there were,
I don't see any changes in your document there.
there were a couple changes. You gotta, food service is split out because it's a different fund, so, it starts on line 29, row 29.
Thanks.
So two changes to that. One was we have a forced migration from Meals Plus to Titan. We were going back and forth with what that would cost us, so we weren't exactly sure, so we put a $10,000 placeholder while the budget was happening. The quote came in, which was lower, so we reduced the budget by that. And then we also decided not to purchase a vending machine at this time for the middle school. Students at a high school have a lot more access to a vending machine than you would necessarily set up for students at a middle school. So we want to more see how the vending machine is going to do at the high school before we purchase another.
Wasn't that a plan from like a year or two ago? Is this just deferring that plan?
The middle school plan?
Well, I thought I remember a conversation where it was gonna start at CHS and then trickle down. Was that?
Yeah.
I remember this discussion maybe from last year or the year before.
So it still is starting at CHS. The machine's there, but to hook it up, it really isn't until this week or next week that that'll actually be operational, because you gotta hook up with a credit card company and then with the meals plan as well. And Lauren's been doing her due diligence of sending emails almost every other day, but we can't get going until the multiple companies that work with that machine are going. So we don't know how it's gonna go at the high school.
So this is delaying it because we really haven't seen
We don't know yet.
how it's played out at CHS.
Yep.
Got it.
So, was that, I believe that we were in the red though last year, right? Based on what I saw, there was a fund transfer into this account.
Yep.
And since
Yep.
this is supposed to be self-funded, how are we, is there a plan to address that in the coming budget?
Well, it's not in this account.
Well, it's
So
overall,
If
I
I
don't
may,
really.
if I may address the elephant on this one, right? Food service was in the red last year. The board had a responsibility and the district had a responsibility to cover that deficit,
Mhm.
right, which we encumbered and solved for, right?
Mm-hmm.
The question becomes is what's the right balance for this year? Because we're already forecasting for our current fiscal year to be really in the red. Well, like $120,000 or so, right?
A self-funding program.
So, but the board has already taken action to increase prices,
Okay.
right? We did that 6 months ago, right? To address the deficit last year. So, and in our cohort across other districts, we're already at or very close to the highest for what we charge for meals.
What do we charge?
It's, we
get
can get
the
that.
number.
Point being, right,
I'm just curious, I know what I pay, so I'm
in the
curious.
budget, right, this year, you'll also see a $100,000 line item to cover for food service deficit, which is new to the budget.
Mm-hmm.
There's been discussion, high level amongst the board about that. There's no action was taken, at least yet. There's a presentation happening by Ms. Crowley to the board on December 6th, where we're gonna go through in detail where we are this current year, how we're trending, and what the right number is, and do we actually need to consider increasing prices again? I'd say stay tuned and let the presentation happen. Let's get the stats, let's let the board go through the motions, and then reevaluate.
No, and I would think too, one consideration might be, is it worth decoupling from the federal program? Like if we are limited based on what the feds require, there are schools that do not participate. With the understanding that the prices also cover those who are in the free and reduced plan. Like my children's school does not participate in a plan, but the children who are still eligible for free and reduced lunches still get free and reduced lunches. So would we benefit? Are we being held back by certain federal regulations that prevent us from being able to move our self-funding program back to self-funding? So I think we need to look at all of our options.
I think,
Yeah, so I think that'd be partially the count of students who are purchasing lunches, and that count has stayed consistent, if not gone up percentage-wise. So I think we have a pretty healthy amount of students who purchase lunch. So lunches are $3 at the elementary school, $3.25 at the middle school, and $3.50 at the high school. Breakfast is $2. So I think the tricky part is if any of us went to Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's and we got a meal for $3.25, that would look a lot different than the amount of food and the quality of food in some ways that the students get here for $3.25.
Right, so this is why I'm saying maybe it's worth looking at, because we, like I said, we don't participate, we pay more. Our food is also covers that. So it's just saying, in the part of the exploratory, because the whole point of this program is it's supposed to be self-funding. Clearly, we haven't been there in a couple of years. So how do we get back to that? And do we need to make fundamental changes in order to get there?
didn't
Well,
Ms.
we were over when all meals were free, which was only a couple years ago. So like a lot of schools. And before that, it kind of went back and forth between being right around zero. So it's been more hit after COVID with the food prices going up, and us going up in prices, but not the same amount as say, a company would go up in prices.
Did Ms. Crowley share, I think I heard this at one of the, maybe it was the November 7th meeting, that, I think you asked the question perhaps, that with the increase in prices, we actually saw an increase in number of students that were actually eating lunch. So it wasn't like the increase in prices that you talked about lowered the amount of students that were actually purchasing lunches. It actually went up.
Well, now you feel like you're paying for food, it's probably gonna be better, right? Like, I don't want $2.
I asked that question, but I didn't really go into it after that because it was also April, and by April I was like, you're buying lunch every day. Like, I don't care. So I wanted to see, and you saw my question, I think, over the email. I'd like to see what September versus September looks like, numbers, and see if there's been a difference, to really get an understanding of, have we seen any drop off in the number of lunches bought? Because I don't think looking at just the spring, I would expect that to go up anyway, just because everybody's done from the school year.
I'm done.
Yeah, so we'll probably look at, just to be honest with you, with October to October, we're kind of basing this year off October a little bit because September the kids come in. Sometimes they start off with lunches that they don't always end up with as parents kind of realize the morning is not an easy time, as well as the snacks aren't always up and running at the beginning because we want to make sure the kids get through the lines and without adding extra on it as well. So we'll definitely look at October to October. We're basing part of our presentation off of your questions as well.
Thank you.
Going to my kids' purchases, snacks, we're running day one. So, just a few things as far as this, and I think Derek can attest to this. You mentioned that, pre-COVID, that there was always a surplus. I mean, there was a big surplus, and it was actually used by kitchen equipment. So if you go back the years, I mean, they carried a hefty overage. And then we had this conversation last year, and I brought it up, and I'll just say it again, that if we're losing money, we're not charging enough for the meals. And we're not charging enough for the meals because what she's purchasing is costing too much. It's real simple. You're self-funded. You pay X, you sell X, and it should be even, if not a surplus. So I think it goes back, I think Lauren's doing a fantastic job, but it's almost like some of the stuff is restaurant quality. So if that's what we're gonna sell, then I think those are the kind of prices we need to start asking for, especially the high school.
And I think that's definitely a combined decision with the school board, because when Lauren got here, she was asked to improve the quality of the
Yep.
food.
And then she certainly
And
has.
she certainly has, and she hasn't heard otherwise since. The quality of food does go with learning as well. So
Yep.
the better the kids are fed, when it's not based on necessarily sugar, the longer they have energy to sustain for learning, which is not easy.
Right.
So, but it does come with a cost. So I think that's part of that overall conversation
And that's
too.
where-
There's different factors that can kind of go with both revenue
Yep.
and
But
expenses.
so I would just encourage looking beyond just because like I said, I know what we pay and it's significantly more than $3. But a lot of kids eat, and it's not. There's a lot more of the free and reduced lunch numbers there. So I would think if you are increasing the quality in the town, supposedly with money like ours, then we should be paying appropriately. Because otherwise we just admit the program's not self-funded. We'll just stop calling it a self-funded program.
Carrie, how is it when it comes to school meals? that this town has plenty of money so they can buy it, but then when it comes to everything else, this town
I'm not
has no
saying
money.
the school has it, but the attitude in town
You
seems
just
to
said
be.
they got plenty of money.
Well, but there is a view among some people that the school has plenty of money, so if people in town have plenty of money to pay $900 increase in taxes, they can pay a couple extra bucks for lunch. Or we say, there is no money, we scale back the food, and we charge appropriately, so we're not losing money. It has to be one or the other.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, right, I'd like to table the conversation, let the board review the presentation from Ms. Crowley on the 6th, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. More information to come on food service.
Just one question. Have you given any thought to possibly outsourcing the program?
I think it's tough. As soon as you outsource, you have less control over it. And I think,
But at least you'd have a fixed cost that would have to be adhered to versus, again, Brian made a very good point, and so did Kerry, but everybody was patting themselves on the back just a couple short years ago because it was a level-funded program. But every year we're dumping money in, and this year with a $37,000 increase and $100,000 going into a fund, it's clearly bleeding. So at some point, you have to stop the bleeding. So my question would be that the board consider possibly outsourcing it and at least getting a cost for it.
I mean, the board can talk about that, so.
All good points.
I'll give you the name of the company.
I think we're all on the same page that we agree that the goal is to make this self-funded. What we take in, or what we send out, we bring back in. I think we're all on the same page with that. So how we get there,
Well,
that's the purview of the school.
My only concern is if we put a line item in the budget, it never comes out, in which case then it's no longer self-funded. So it's just like, so is it or isn't it?
And there are other schools that also have a line item. I think partly it has to do with the size of the school. Other schools are larger, they're dividing things up among more students. More students are obviously therefore eating lunch as well, so there's a size factor as far as schools that tend to sometimes put money into the budget for the school as well.
All right, we're gonna move to buildings and grounds. Buildings and grounds, 2610. If we scroll back up, it looks like,
18,800.
was it change? Or you're saying the increase?
There was a reduction of $18,800 in buildings and grounds.
Oh, that has to do with the oil and propane, right?
Oil, propane, as well as there was a reduction in LMS radios.
So, and before the budget too, there was a reduction, which was part of the original budget in electricity. So when we sat here last year, a lot of the talk was over energy costs. Those aren't back to where we want them to be, but they have dropped from last year, therefore we're able to project less of an expense next year.
Mr. Cutter, what was the amount? 18.8?
$18,800.
Yeah.
So this budget is down $116,493 from last year.
Again, I would more say it's down 50,000 from last year as we look at the fiscal year '24. I don't know if I'm on the changes in budget segments.
Yeah.
So again, if I look at the fiscal year '24, which is column D, it was 1,555,000 last year, and now it's at 1,506,000. That first one would have encumbrances in it as well.
Got it. Okay, I see that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions on buildings and grounds?
On their emergency management, you have a $56,000, 700 reduction. Did that go somewhere else, or is it just a pullout?
So that's one of those tricky things where it was encumbrance for the radios that we have. So that came from last year. At the end of last year, we asked for some safety things, radios being key among them. The board approved that, and that money then got shifted from fiscal year '23 to '24, one-time expense, and now would be, therefore it's removed from the budget. So we had a decent amount of our radios came from SAFE grants, the first round. In round two, we applied for more radios. They didn't tell us at the beginning that they were only awarding money for entryways, secure entryways. So anything that was not secure entryways did not get funded. We thought we had a pretty good chance of getting funded for that. And at that time, we didn't know when the next round of SAFE grants would come out, and we knew that radios, especially by that point at the elementary school, was a key safety factor. So we had some by SAFE grants, and then some by local tax money as well.
Additional questions on buildings and grounds? Okay. We'll move to the business office.
So this is gonna look like a large reduction, because in business, I capture also regular ed transportation, and the school board made a decision after looking at the numbers to go down by one bus, as far as the buses that pick up the students. So going from 9 buses to 8 buses, which still leaves, a safe amount of kids on the bus. That was a reduction of that $80,132.
Was that a change in the way that they set up the contract? Because I thought we had asked before, like, is there a way to be able to get money clawed back if they only give us 7 buses instead of 8? Is it now on a per bus basis? Because I thought when they were having staffing issues and we were looking for potential clawbacks, it is, no, it's picking up all the kids and dropping them off where they need to be.
So
It's not about how many vehicles themselves. Is that would change with the new contract?
So that has not changed with the new contract.
Okay.
It's something that, we are still, I know in Litchfield, sometimes we see that kids are combined on buses, but in other towns, they're not even combined on buses. They say these buses are not gonna show up, we cannot fit them on the other buses, parents have to come pick up. So because our bus company is better staffed than others, there are some bumps in the road, but it's a pretty smooth transition back and forth from school where they don't deny anybody any transportation. I do agree with, agree with the sentiment as far as it would be nice to get some back, but we would have to kind of prove more liquidated damages, and if a kid's getting home within a reasonable amount of time, that's hard to prove.
Now, going from 9 to 8, if they do have staffing issues again, like they did last year, are you concerned that 7 means somebody has to wait for the bus to come back around again? That there's just no way you can get all the kids done on 7 buses if they come up 1 short?
No, the school board asked some really good questions, just like you're asking too, and as far as what's the right number? Is it 9? Is it 8? Is it 7? As we looked at the numbers, I think that kind of helped us decide on the 8 as well, because at the end of the day, we do, First Student does offer a nice service as far as making sure the kids get home and get picked up. And we felt more comfortable with 8 buses going down 1 bus and going down 2 buses. First Student does believe that they'd still be able to transport with 7 buses as well.
It would be very tight at 7.
Right, but you get what I'm saying, though.
part of the
You don't
reason-
have 20 kids waiting for the next one to come back around.
And part of the reason was going down to 7, there would not be capacity at 6.
Exactly.
And that weight factor would also be too much, so.
Perfect, thank you.
Other questions on the business office, business budget? This is also the budget that had the transfers to HR, correct?
It did, yep.
So part of that decrease that we're seeing is associated with that transfer over to HR?
Part of, yes, well, you're not seeing an overall decrease because it also captured the increase in buses.
Correct.
But there is a decrease from the transfer to
Yeah.
HR.
Other questions on business? Sorry. All right, seeing none, we'll move to the SAU.
So no changes were made by the school board on this. I think it was already down from the year before.
Down $16.
Yeah.
Questions on the SAU budget?
do we really expect that our legal fees will continue to be that elevated relative to past years? Is there something in particular driving those? Because we have 2021, 25, 2022, 39, 2023, 35, well, actual, we budgeted 60, now we're requesting 60. Next year, we're gonna request 60. Like, why are we going with,
Is
like,
that contracts? Is that part of that?
So, we do look at negotiations, because when we negotiate, we use the attorneys more. We certainly, I think, we've been involved in some special ed conversations that have been impacting that line. And the land purchase has been another, factor that has been impacting that line.
Okay.
And with the ongoing expectation of a school project, there'll be ongoing legal there also, so that's why we've kept that level funded.
What's the year-to-date, do you have the year-to-date spend on that, Mr. Todd?
I could look that up.
You don't have to get it right this second.
I always feel like it should be broken apart, like school purchase and business, standard business. Because part of it I could stomach, the other part I'm like, for serious.
Other questions on the SAU budget? Okay. Curriculum.
So curriculum had no changes from the school board.
Questions on curriculum? Which has a decrease of about $46,000, which is mostly associated with the math program. Yep.
It's such a weird.
And that's because we used that, it was the end of year, was that, am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, so
End
it's
of year,
more
go ahead, you can.
the reading
articulate.
program. So at the end of last year, we were able to get a quote whether we paid by the year or we paid, I think it was for 3 years. And if we paid upfront for 3 years, it was significantly less than paying per year. So it was, I think that was an easier decision by the school board as far as like, well, we know, you don't decide on a reading program then switch it up the next year. There's just no way that a school typically does that. So we know we're gonna be using it for multiple years, why not save money?
Okay. Other questions on the curriculum budget?
I just miss the days when we had the hardcover books that we all had to cover with paper bags, and then we would probably
Decorate them?
cost, yeah, right? Probably didn't cost nearly as much.
Is that,
They might have cost more, actually.
that's line 641 you were
Maybe, yeah.
talking about with the reading program?
That is line 641, yeah.
Do you mind just putting a note in there, like reading program on year 1 of 3, or something like paid up front, so that we can track, or expect to see another large,
I don't think that's in
Large
this year's
statement there?
budget, though, right?
but I
It's
mean,
not,
with like a 0 or something? Because
Well, what we
paid it-
should have is there should be a spreadsheet of various curriculum, like when is each one up, kind of like a CIP plan for the curriculum.
There is one.
it's on the
Perfect, so-
website, yeah.
Yeah.
But
If I should
I
have
think,
to go hunt
I think
for
to your
it.
point, it's not in this budget because they used end of year fund balance from last year to pay for it. Otherwise, it would have
Right.
been in this year's budget, right? Is that,
It was more just for notes, so that we would expect another, I don't know, how much was the 3-year, cost?
3-year
Or
cost
roughly.
was 53,500.
So, oh, I see, that
Yeah.
makes sense. So, I'm just wondering if we put a line in there that just says, you know, this has been paid for, and so we would expect a $50,000 increase, but it's up to you, it's your budget, so.
Yeah, and so we would have that for the following year as well, where we wouldn't have to pay for reading materials. And a lot of times when you get a new program, the beginning of that program is the most expensive because, you know, especially at elementary schools, they have leveled readers. So within a classroom, they might have like 10 different books of different levels and like a lot of those. So you buy the series first where the kids actually have the books that they hold in their hands. And then now that you have that, you know, your yearly cost does go down in general anyways. So next, if
Okay.
we stay with the reading program, we wouldn't expect the 3-year average that started with the first year. We wouldn't expect that same average
Oh, I
for
see.
the following years.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hayes, I just want to give you an opportunity to make sure if you have any questions, we give you a chance to ask them, sir.
Thank you. I'm all set.
Okay. Any other questions on curriculum?
Line 272, conference workshop reimbursements. 2 people going to a conference for $7,800. Is it in Hawaii?
Which line
Bob,
is that,
you know
Mr.
we
Lear?
don't go to Hawaii,
272.
right? You know we don't go to Hawaii. So,
It's $3,900 a person to go to a conference.
no, so the way that's calculated, so it's the support staff collective bargaining agreement. There's a formula in the collective bargaining agreement about the amount that we need to budget. And it's basically twice the amount that we spent in FY '23. So it's not 2 people, it's double the overall expense. And again, that's a contractual amount. So if you look at this year's budget, we're at 3526, we budgeted $7,800.
Are they gonna jump that much?
And again, this is contractual. It's to make sure that there is enough money available to support all our support staff who are taking courses or attending workshops or otherwise taking professional development.
So you're saying the $3,900 increase is tied to what is in the contract currently?
This collective bargaining states to a formula that is tied to that number. That is correct.
I mean, in the,
How many years has the collective bargaining agreement been in place? Because the other increases are not nearly that much.
It's gonna, it depends on the previous year's usage though, so it's intended to say, where's the usage amount? And to make sure that we're able to meet the needs of our support staff.
well, I think we have to too recognize that there's 2 different obligations here, right? The budget, the school board is obligated to present the budget with it. The budget committee can look at past spending and say, yeah, we understand you're obligated to budget it, but you don't really spend it. So, what is an appropriate level to fund it? So, there are 2 different responsibilities, and it's something we have to decide as a budget committee as to how you wanna handle it.
Any other questions on curriculum?
On that, I mean, let's think about that for a second. 7,800 for workshops for all of our support staff, custodians,
How many people is
administrative
that?
assistants, paraprofessionals.
Sure, but you
You know,
have,
it's a massive number of people when you add it up. And even though we're down positions currently, you know, we need to continue to invest in making sure that our people are at the top of their game.
I don't think
So,
anybody's arguing with you on that. I think the
I-
question is historical trends.
I hear you on the historical trend. I'm just saying it's $7,800.
How many people does that impact? How many people,
I mean, it's
benefit
over
from
100. It's, I can get you an exact number of who comes under that
so we're
CBA.
talking $80 a person that we're spending on their learning for the year?
Ballpark.
Anything else on curriculum? Next is technology.
No changes by the school board on technology.
And this budget has an increase of $4,028. Any questions? Ample wait time, hearing none. Special services, which shows a decrease of $170,287 based on actions taken by the school board.
So special services, I have a reduction of, did you say 170,000?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yeah.
Yep.
$170,000, which, do some quick math here. Has an increase of about $639,000 over last year. Questions on special services?
Do we no longer list the schools? We used to have like out-of-district placements and have the schools, are we just lumping them now?
We are. What we're trying to do, because it's very easy to discern who might be taking advantage of these services, which would not be a good thing. So we have done the consolidation in the budget. We have provided the school board with a spreadsheet that lists that out by the actual schools, the tuition, et cetera. So the board does have access to that information, but it's not something that we want to publish on our website or put out in front of the entire town. So you'll see that it has been consolidated for student privacy.
So is there a way that the budget committee could get that list? I'm just curious, because I know what we used to pay, and I'd be curious to see how much each individual school has increased. I actually do
If you
compare.
would like to know the price increase for a school, we can get you that information.
I think that would be fair. I think that would be a compromise.
What's driving the increase? Just more students then?
So there are more students. We've had additional students who have come on board. There are additional students who are in the pipeline right now. And these aren't, so when we make a projection, we're not just saying we think so-and-so might need this. We're talking about where the legal process, the special ed process has evolved to the point that we're in a written prior notice status, and, this is in the pipeline to lead to that student's placement. So those are the ones that are actually in the
So
budget.
is it students moving into district, or is it students we just can't handle internally anymore?
Yes.
Is that,
So is it double the amount that we had last year? Because the line out of district tuition is more than doubled. So that's double plus your 5% that you have figured in, which,
There are more students in
Is it
out-of-district
double?
placement. Well, it's a combination of more costly placements. So they, when we get you
well,
the
it says
prices per
5% increase
school,
per student.
they are more, well, yeah, but,
And the transportation's up 20%.
So it's,
and it
it's
may not
more,
be,
Transportation?
it's definitely more
is
students.
transportation.
The 5% is only gonna add up so
But they
much.
have
It's
their own
more students
transportation.
that have
So
it
it's
in their
separate from this.
IEPs or the written prior notice,
Budget.
that their FAPE,
Yeah, but this is just.
their
the tuition.
access to
It's not the
free
transportation.
public education is an out-of-district placement.
I think a clarification I'm hearing from the side conversation is, does the out-of-district tuition include the
It's a
transportation
separate
cost? in
line
it?
within the
No,
special
this is just the
services
placements.
budget.
It's just
That's
the
just the
placement.
So
placement.
it's double. You have double the students going out of district.
we,
I don't know if it's double exactly. There's
Or,
more, there are
or is
more
it some of
students.
the new students need to be placed in a more expensive program that you have never had to tap into before?
or
That's some of the cases.
or the previous budget was based upon several placements in a certain school, and now it's several in a more expensive school. So, yes, that, all of these factors are the reason why it is up to the rate that you're seeing.
And right now, you're seeing our most up-to-date, because in our opinion, we budget with the most up-to-date because there is a reserve fund if there are changes. So that was why the school board was able to decrease the budget, because we went to them and we said, here, can't give specifics, but here's the reasons why we believe we can go down by this amount.
How much is in the reserve right now? You guys know?
160.
160.
Can I ask you a question on the,
guess you
transportation cost?
It's one place.
I found that now. Mr. Cutter, you mentioned there was a 20% increase, so our FY '24 was a little over 500K, and now we're at 775, so 20% increase would be about 100K. But we have an increase of 270.
What line are you looking at?
Sorry, it's the district-wide sped transportation. It's the bottom of page 10. It's on there.
Yep, but again, you're also having increases for students. So same thing with tuition, you have increases in transportation on top of those,
So
the
more
number,
kids plus
the rate
increased
increase.
costs. Okay.
Yeah.
So, back to the conversation I believe that Mr. Taylor had at one point was, did we not add a position in the hopes of limiting this? And if that's not happening, do we even still have the position?
Which position?
It was a
That was
couple
the
of,
high
it was a
school
couple of years, it was,
And Ms. Bandersky's time.
yeah, it was two,
She was the one that presented it in the CHS library, and it was for the budget of, I believe, her last year with the district.
2 years ago.
I believe it was a sped position that was supposed to help reduce
Out of
Easter
district,
seals tuitions.
Yes.
I believe.
I remember that conversation.
Okay, so that was for our in-house program. And those students are here. That's not resulting in what we're seeing. The increases that we're seeing are impacting all three schools, not the high school specifically.
So my question then becomes, is that position actually achieving savings, or is this would be worse if we didn't have that position?
The special services budget would,
Yeah, that position,
Was that the one that was reduced?
I'm trying to track exactly how
I thought
that
it replaced a service we were paying for.
Just, I remember being said,
Let's
hey, if we
eliminate
do
that.
this, we're gonna save money. So now, let's
And
see,
there was
have
also
we
one
saved money?
There was one other component that, you know what, if we find other local districts that need that service, that we could even potentially get students from other districts, so other districts would pay us.
Let me get back to you on exactly
Okay.
how that position moved and what the impact has been. We
Thank
have
you.
not received anybody in, I can tell you that, so that didn't come to fruition. But I want to track exactly where that position went.
I think your question was.
Well, because if we have the position and it's not doing what we were told it was doing, do we still need the position? We could use the money to fund the things that it was supposed to offset to begin with.
Your original question was, would this budget be higher had that position not been here, right?
I guess
Wasn't that your
I'm-
question?
I guess my question is, do we have the position still? Because I think it's a question.
Was it ever even filled? Yeah.
Because if we don't even have the position, then we shouldn't be budgeting it. Because then we know what happens to money that doesn't get spent. And then, if we do have it, are we seeing it being effective? Because if it's not effective, we should discuss whether it's worth continuing to still fund it and not use that money to offset these massive increases. So I just it's now been a while since we talked about it. Are we seeing what we thought we would see? Is it time to reevaluate how we budget that area?
So you've captured that as a follow-up, right?
I did.
Correct. Okay.
Yep.
I do have one follow-up question, Dr. Jetty. At the beginning, you had mentioned something about you've received written notification of some students that are planning on coming into the district. Is there a rule that a parent or another school district needs to provide X amount of time written notice for a student to transfer? Or could, like, literally some kid show up tomorrow with their parent ready to register, and on a moment's notice, you need to be able to provide services? Is there any, my reason for asking, if there is a lead time and written notice that needs to be given, then where in the fiscal year do we figure that, okay, nobody else can join because the written notice is 90 days or something like that? Is that the way it works?
No.
No.
So, thank you for that clarification. So the written prior notice is with students who are ours, and we have to go through a formal process, notifying parents and families of what we're able to do for how to educate the child in the least restrictive environment. So that's students who are already here.
Okay.
Frankly, somebody could show up tomorrow, 4 kids, and we register them and we start the programming. And that has happened to us multiple times this year. And that's, so, it'd be great if we could get advance notice, but that never happens.
Okay, so the parachuting in of kids, that the fund can be used, that I didn't expect it, boom, I can use it. For the kids internally that need that written notification, is there a certain amount of time, or is it on a case-by-case basis that some kid you may be able to process and be able to figure out in 30 days, another one you may need 120 days because you need more time? Like, again, if I'm trying to look at what point do I at least get some sort of constant in the equation?
Yep.
That I know, okay, this one's gonna stay the same, but I still need to be protected, but I have a fund for it.
And the constant is the school district has to meet the educational needs of the child.
Yep.
When we're looking for an out-of-district placement, that can be done fairly quickly in some cases, and it can be very protracted in other cases. It's going to depend on the receiving school. What seats do they have available? What openings are there? It's going to depend on the family. Okay, we want to visit a couple of different options. We want to better understand what the schools offer to us. it depends on us also, trying to figure out exactly who has the right program for that individual student needs. So it can be a quick turnaround. You know, the magic is there's a school, there's a seat, and everybody's happy with it, and we can make that happen. And then it can be a lengthy turnaround. It can be a half a year.
Any final questions for special services?
What's the CPI trainer thing? This is like a new item in the budget.
What page you on?
Sorry?
It goes on to, what is this, page two?
Top of page
Top
two.
of page two. Additional trainer, blended certification trainer, renewal certificate. There's a whole new, it's a new line.
CPI additional trainer, it's 810 dues and fees.
I mean, there was nothing
What
last
line
year.
is it? I mean, sorry, what page?
Well, we
810.
we have that this year, right?
Yeah, that's in
I
this
have-
budget.
Well, we're in the 2024 budget?
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's this
Yeah,
year.
75.
This year?
It's in
We
this
added
year
it
and it's
last
going
year.
next year.
And we're
was added last
proposing to
year.
maintain it.
So this is gonna be an ongoing, so what is this?
This
Explain
is
to me.
often ongoing for every school district. So what it is it's a person or persons, and usually school districts do too, because the training is it has to do with safety. It very much has to do with safety of the student and the staff. But you start with learning de-escalation techniques, how to work with kids who are starting to be emotionally dysregulated. So a lot of the beginning is focused on that, but then you move into, okay, students overly dysregulated, they need to be physically restrained. How do you do so in a way that is protective of yourself and of the student? How do you end the restraint in a way which is not detrimental to, again, the student or the staff? Because, you know, we want to make sure that if a parent brings their student in healthy, we return them healthy, even if they become dysregulated during the day. And we also want to make sure that our staff who, I mean, the main reason people go into education is they care about kids. They don't want to restrain. So if they go through a restraint, we want to make sure that they are comfortable doing it, and they feel secure in kind of putting hands on with a kid, that they feel secure in what they're doing.
There's probably, I'm assuming there's a legal component to that too, right? Like if you are restraining a kid and you're not certified by this, that there can be repercussions.
I mean, there's the Good Samaritan law, but I think there's also just what you're alluding to me is if you're going to invite 400 kids into your school and you invite anybody into your school, you know some are going to get dysregulated. You have an obligation to make sure that there's certain staff within that building that can handle that in a way which is beneficial for everybody. Is how I would answer. I don't know, I mean, I still think like you can restrain, but we would want to make sure that we have staff, and it's not all staff, that can restrain in the most productive way, most safe way. So I think if you didn't have that, it could fall with different legal things. This is a way to kind of, I think, protect us legally, but more important for me,
Safety.
is safety.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, last call. Any final services?
Was there a reduction of 14,000 for the admin for billing services? Was that listed on your spreadsheet?
Yep, so 14,000 for Medicaid billing
So
services.
that was removed from the
That was
budget?
removed.
That was
So
removed.
does that mean we're not billing Medicaid anymore? So there's an offset on the revenue side as well?
That's correct.
So we're not billing Medicaid?
We have not really been able to bill
Haven't
Medicaid
been
for the
billing
last
Medicaid.
couple of years. When we're down the amount of staff that we're down, it becomes something that's just not attainable to do.
So how much money are we losing out by not billing for something we're entitled to bill for?
She explained, Carrie, at the presentation.
I wasn't there because yep.
Well,
Yep.
you didn't watch it either then, but
Well,
she
there's other people
explained,
watching tonight, so please
Go
fill
ahead.
in the audience.
You
she
can ask.
explained that it was more costly to go after the money than it is for what the money is.
I find that hard to believe.
Line 580 travel, it's level funded since last year, but the 2023 budget was 4339 and only 717 was spent
You're on page 1.
on page 1. Yep, I'm sorry. Do you know what our year-to-date is for that line for 2024?
I'm sorry,
Do
what
we
line?
expect to
Line one,
actually get up
Travel,
to
580.
that 4,600?
So I can figure out the year-to-date.
Yeah, because it looks like the 21 actual was 530, 22 923, 23 717. So there was a 23 budget was $4,300 and we spent $717.
Or is that low because of positions aren't filled?
If you don't, we can capture that as a follow-up.
I can pull up your
That's
financials,
kinda-
Doug, and take a look too.
Just spinning for a bit, but I think we're in a better spot. So, but it will take another little bit.
While we wait for that, any final questions on special services? Last call.
Page 8, 2150 speech services, you show a reduction for professional services of 58,000. Is that something we're not using anymore? Speech language consultant outside evaluation service, reduction of 58,136.
So what happened was last year, we weren't able to hire a speech person, so we had to pay for professional service to bring it in to cover the IEPs.
Yep.
We went hopeful again, being able to hire it again this year, so it got replaced in the budget to hopefully have somebody that is an employee of Litchfield and not somebody that we have to go out, because whenever we go out, we pay more money.
Is that a new position?
No, it's the same position as last year that we
No,
couldn't
is it a
fill.
new position?
Well, there's always a speech
You
person.
paid an outside service, are you bringing on a new employee?
We've always had a speech person in the budget. And we could not hire that person, but we were legally obligated to provide the services, so we did contracted services. But
Yes.
the position is something that we've.
But it's a new hire,
It's not a new.
It's a new
It's a new
person,
person.
but it's not a new position.
through a contracted service, but now you're hiring an employee, so it's a new hire.
Our goal was always to hire an
Is it
employee.
going to warrant article?
No, well, our goal was always to, no,
So it's not going to warrant article, okay.
no, because this was always a
It's just a
position
sticking point of mine.
that somebody left, we tried to hire, we weren't able to hire. We had to go to
years?
contracted service for a year. Our goal is always to bring in a Litchfield person, that was part of the budget before.
And actually, the budget, the question about the warrant article is not for Doug nor me. That's a school board question, so we'll note that.
And let's put a pin in that, because I think that will come up on our salaries and benefits.
And Mr. Todd, the year-to-date, for 580 special education travel, I have it, in your latest report, it says $434.
So we're up to $508.
All right, so $508 out of the 4,600.
Okay.
So,
Thank
So,
you.
I have a question on travel.
Just before we, on that line though, notice that 4,200 is travel expenses and ticket costs for staff on class trips, right? So that, I think is probably more day-to-day travel when we're sending staff to St. Francis, driving around the district, it's 6.2 miles from the high school to the elementary school, back and forth. So I think that's how we're getting to that amount. Remember, field trips and so forth can still come. I'm sorry,
It could have
Terry.
come in the past couple of years too. So are we still budgeting sped transportation as the worst-case scenario where each individual is on our own with no combination with neighboring schools? In the past, we've budgeted, we know we have this is one of the reasons why I like to see the placements, is because how many kids are going to each school? Can we combine runs? Are they individual runs? Is there a chance to consolidate with the neighboring school? Or are we developing the budget on the worst-case scenario where our students by themselves with no consolidation?
She talked about that too.
I don't care, I'm asking the question now.
If I could just, one point to make, so Sophia's been working very hard on a special ed transportation solution. She reached out to a neighboring school district, and our cost share, Litchfield's cost share was $130,000.
Okay, well, I'm still
And
looking
the
at
point being
270.
that we're working very hard to find those, but, when I heard a cost share at that amount, I'm like, what's the regular? How much are we paying, or how much is that district paying for that service? Because if our portion of it is that amount, that's unbelievable.
Oh, believe me, I've
right?
thought about getting certified and just dropping a kid off on the way to school. Believe me, I totally get how expensive it is. So, that's why, but I know in the past, we've budgeted worst-case scenario, no ability to share, and yet every year we are able to find a share. So I'm trying to understand how we develop the budget.
And which line are you looking at, though?
The, 519 transportation.
Bottom of page 10.
So it is,
So one from 1 to
there
10.
is shared parts on that budget, but it's from the information we have now, how we get the kids to the schools.
Right.
Hopefully that will continue to change.
Okay.
As we look at more cost share. There's also, we're not the only school district, that's struggling with this in New Hampshire. I think they're trying to get a little bit more lenient of a law, more for like an Uber for education type of thing. I don't know where that is in tracking. And then, we're also starting to look at if we bought our own van, and we employed somebody, what that would cost as well. So we're looking at multiple things because it's a large number.
Okay, I have another question on this line. I believe in the past, the McKinney-Vento Act was budgeted at 5,000. Is there a reason we went to 8?
We've, it's student need.
All right,
Yeah, okay, good, okay.
all right. And nothing else on special services? All right, last budget for the evening, the largest, which is salary and benefits.
Not doing food service and legal.
Or did I miss those?
Unless I missed it, I have
we
general
did that.
fund and food service.
We did food service.
We did food service.
We did
Food service.
non-salary.
We did not do salary. Yeah, you're correct. I'll
So which one, where are we going?
I'll come back to food
General
service
fund.
salary. What was the other one you mentioned, Brian?
General fund?
General fund.
So,
All right, so let's do salary and benefits right now, Fund 10.
So with salary and benefits, what was reduced by the school board was when we went to have the increases in health insurance, our health insurance the company said budget for 10%, and then during the budget process, we got the rates around November, I don't know, last week I think it was, and we were at 6.2%, which if you were to know about towns or other school districts, 6.2 between this year and last year was one of the lowest that healthcare went up. So we were able to reduce the budget by about 90,000 for that. And then just like the previous year, the school board chose to reduce the budget by 150,000 due to the savings. That typically happens with attrition. Somebody retires or moves to another school district, that might be more at the top of the scale, and we hire somebody that's not at the top of the scale. So we've been seeing, I think last year we saw a reduction of about 180,000. So the school board went with the same number that they had the year before, which was that 150,000.
So those two actions were a reduction of $240,000. Questions on salary and benefits, Fund 10.
So is there a list of how many of these existing positions are currently not filled or have not been filled for, say, the past couple of years? I mean, it's nice to have them in the budget. It'd be great if we hired them. But if traditionally we're not hiring them, do we continue to fund them?
So we have roughly 40 positions, I think, right now that are not filled.
Okay.
Are most of those,
So the majority of those are the paraprofessionals, where there are 29, and, I mean, this can be off by one or two, because I don't know when this one was created.
We have 40 and 3/4, and this is as of a report that I received on November 6th.
So that's how much? So is that like 500,000? Is that-
40 and 3/4 for all is 837,775,
those are all current unfilled positions?
including paras, right? Including speech, teachers, food service, custodians, grounds, all of it.
Additional questions on salary and benefits?
I don't know that they're listed in this, but they might be listed in food, but it's my understanding that you give the leads in the kitchens full year benefits, even though they don't work full years. They only work the school year. If this is correct, why are you doing that? And that might be part of the reason that that's running in the red so badly. If they only work the school year, that's a benefit that only the teachers get. But if you're giving it to certain individuals and not all the individuals,
Let me go back and take a look at the collective bargaining agreement, because again, that would be driven by the terms of that agreement. I don't know that the benefit piece is parsed out by school year, full year, but we'll
I
take a
think
look.
that was part of that that COVID agreement, wasn't it? Like
I don't think so. I
the
don't remember
rider
that,
or whatever it was it is.
But if they're not working the full year, they shouldn't be getting the benefits that the teachers get.
Unless the collective bargaining stipulates that, so we'll take a look at that. and get
Give them
back to you.
something to do in the summer. They can clean the kitchens. They can help the custodial staff. They need help there.
Again, we'll take a look at the collective bargaining agreement
Please.
and make sure that we're aligned.
Additional
Is
questions?
that a
on-
public document?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we can get a copy of that as well.
It's online. It's on our website, yep.
I'll share the link to that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Any additional questions on salary and benefits?
Salary and benefits includes the 5 new positions too, right? Grade K, grade 1, mental health, ELL.
Yeah.
But it also removes the math teacher from CHS.
It removes, yep, it also, yeah, the
And it
decrease
just
in
moved
math
one,
teacher,
yeah.
as well as, which is a cost neutral, a special ed teacher going from the high school to the elementary school.
So, and was there an increase in the bonus pool? No, there was an addition of a bonus pool, correct? There was the salary raise pool, but now there's an addition of a bonus pool.
That is correct, a 2% bonus pool.
Did the school board discuss that, correct? Was that a discussion point? I can't
We
recall.
talked about it, there were no actions on it.
I can think of an action. It's gonna-
You know what line that was?
That's on salary and benefits at the very back of the
Page
budget.
44, at the top, 110. It's $64,000.
Top of page 44.
Page 44.
And who gets the bonuses? You don't get them to the
That's
teachers, right?
admin and non-union.
But then wasn't that removed?
No, I don't know. It's-
No,
Did
never,
I must have put the, where was the 150,000 removed?
that was a bottom line.
So,
Oh, it wasn't from this
Wasn't
specific
from this.
line? Oh,
but if
okay.
you look,
I
if you
wrote
were
that.
online, Kate, it was removed from that area, from that 2,900, 110. So
Okay.
if you're looking, that note now shows up as a negative, because if you start with 148,000 and you removed 150,000, you're in the negatives at that point. Doesn't mean that we're in the negatives, because there are still funding things that are associated with the notes in there as well.
Is that because
Okay.
you move that?
Well, it's tough to put a negative in a budget, like,
Right.
we really shouldn't be doing that, but how do you really parse it out? Last year, I put it under the 100s for salaries, but no other things are 100s for salaries. So if we're kind of keeping track of things as the year goes on, and we want to make sure that we're consistent with that, it's easier if it's grouped with the 110s. And then looking at where to put it with the 110s, as Holly and I sat down this morning, there's no great place for it, so.
So, back to my question on the bonus pools. I see that it's actually trickles in through a bunch of different areas. What is the combined total associated with the bonus pools?
60.
No, there's 64,000 there, but it's also in, social security, non-retirement, teacher retirement. It goes through a whole bunch of series of other ones. I mean, sure, I can do the math, but I wasn't sure.
I mean, I don't know without doing the math too.
I was just trying to say, I figured you could just pull a number and then be like, oh, look,
68.
no, it's more than that.
No, because it's under each of all the other lines in the budget.
Yeah, so I was just like, if you,
benefits.
off the top of, there's an additional 8 just in teacher retirement, so once you add them all up, it's significantly more than 68.
Oh, I was looking at
Page
raises. I was looking at the pool.
Yeah, no,
I see
it
what you're
trickles down.
So I know people have alluded, there's a large budget. The thinking going behind the bonus pool is that if we look, the stories that we're hearing from in education, outside of education, is that the 3% that sometimes people go up on isn't what people are going up on lately because of inflation. So the bonus pool bumps that up, but what it doesn't do, it doesn't attach with employee for years to come. Because the bonus comes 1 year and then it's gone. Where if somebody has a true 5% raise, they get 5% that year, and that's already part of their salary for the next year, which is probably gonna be bumped up as well. So it was looking to acknowledge that inflation is there and it's hitting everybody, but without kind of bumping it up for truly years to come as well.
I understand the logic behind that. I think my thoughts on it, and I understand this isn't our purview, I think just my general philosophy about a bonus is I believe it should be tied to some sort of metrics. So for example, if someone were going to get a bonus at my company or anybody's company here, right, it's based on here were the goals that were outlined. Did you accomplish those? Whether it's tied to evaluation or whatever, some sort of rubric. Yes, you achieve that, you get a bonus. That's just my thinking when it comes to that. I understand that's not our purview. That's the school board's purview. It's just my 2 cents on it.
The town doesn't have a bonus pool. I find it kind of odd that we have one here.
Concern is once you put it in, it's hard to take out too.
But the town actually does kind of have a bonus thing, because you're paying officers like a bonus to come on, correct? Like, isn't it like $5,000 something you pay?
They have a sign-on bonus.
A sign-on
But
bonus.
it's not a bonus for your job that you do during the year.
You get a ladder for different degrees too, so there's not like there's not an ability to
Right,
change
but
your
it's
pay.
it's listed as a bonus, so they have a bonus, is my point.
Yeah, it's
And I don't know if part of their new contract, nor is it for me to know, but I don't know if part of the new contract is over 3% too. I don't know. I mean, it's very typical right now for a contract to be up more than 3%.
Ours is 3%.
Other comments, questions on salaries and benefits? I may regret doing this, but I'm going to open the conversation on the proposed new positions. It kind of circles back to Mr. Leary's comments from earlier.
Where you at?
Well, actually, what I'm looking at is, I think the cleanest way to look at it, in my opinion, unless you all tell me otherwise, Mr. Totten's spreadsheet that has the budget changes on it. The third tab says main budget drivers, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, that lists out those positions on there, correct? Is that the
correct.
cleanest view to see those?
That is the positions that are part of the budget.
Okay. And so some of those include positions like kindergarten teacher, first grade teacher that are tied to district policies that have to do with ratios of kids. I understand that.
Let's be careful on that, though, because the policy says we should strive for it. It doesn't say it's a must, an absolute necessity.
Right.
We have gone over by 0.4 students in the past, and when we're looking at 1.3 million, there might be some leeway.
So I think my comment and what my point is going to be on this, and it connects back to what Mr. Leary was talking about earlier with the, I forget which position we were talking about, the speech path
Yep.
position. I'm of the belief, and I've read the advisory warrant article from now 20 years ago. I'm of the belief that y'all use the speech path as an example. I don't view that as something that should go to warrant article. That was a position that the district had, they couldn't fill. They outsourced the services, and now they're trying to not outsource the services, and they're trying to hire that position internally. I do view the position like the IT technician as a new position. That's a new head count where we're looking to increase the full-time employees that we have in the technology department. So my opinion is when I look at this and I look at, for example, the ELL teacher going from 0.7 to 1.0. Well, it was a full-time position. We took it back based on need, and now we're taking it back up based on need. I don't think that should go to warrant article. I do think the IT technician, because it is new, and we don't currently have, yes, we have an IT technician, I understand that, but now we're gonna have 2 IT technicians. And it's not tied to a policy like we're talking about with kindergarten and first grade. I think that one should go to warrant article. My opinion on that, I know I opened a can of worms on this, but I felt it was important to have a healthy discussion about it.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
Same analysis.
Thanks. Other thoughts, comments?
I'm trying to remember on the K in the grade, I lost my tabs now.
First.
K in grade one, was there one of the other grades that was going down there, which you were just gonna move one over, or is those two net positions?
That is, I think you're correct on that from what I remember from the
Yeah,
presentation.
I thought there was one.
Only one of them
Like
was a
grade two
net.
was going down or something, so grade one had to go up, or vice versa, or something like that, or?
Yeah, it's actually, hang on, I'm trying to get the spreadsheet to show me everything. So first grade is a +1 because the kindergarten, we added that fifth, so
Yeah.
we're gonna need that fifth.
Then you
in
were
first.
reducing in second grade though, right?
And then in second grade, we're going down by 1 because that teacher will actually follow the second graders in the third grade.
Okay.
So we're gonna go up by 1 in third. So I'm thinking of it as the one extra that we have, or the fifth in second grade is moving up to third.
Yeah.
And then we're adding 1 in first because we have the population coming out of the kindergarten.
Okay,
So it's +1 overall at the school.
okay, so the grade K teacher isn't really a +1 then, because you already have that fifth.
We have 5K
You
this
already have
year.
the fifth,
Yep.
okay.
But it's not part of the current budget for this
Right,
year.
it was
So you
added
added
after
that
the,
to budget
it was
last
added after the
year.
fact, yeah.
That was
So that position already exists, or person's already there.
Person's
You're just-
already-
So wait, we were able to
That was
fund it
an
in our
August
existing
hire.
budget, but now we need to add an extra $100,000. Can't we just take whatever $100,000 we already had towards it?
It came out of it came out of your kindergarten, you have a fund.
Well, it could come out.
It did not get funded, released yet.
It has not been released yet, because if we can fund it with leftover money, we'll do that
Leftover
first. And
money
if not,
Because you haven't filled other positions.
Correct. We have 800,000 in vacant.
Right.
The goal would be to have funded it from that kindergarten
If
fund that
we
you
were
have.
fully staffed, we would have needed to
Right.
do that, right? 'Cause
Correct.
it wouldn't have been in the budget.
Correct.
So what is the mental health clinician school counselor? Not saying it's not necessary, because I know what my school has, but is this a new position based on what's here?
So we currently, what we're trying to achieve is parity across the 3 schools. So right now GMS is the most understaffed in that department. So we have 1 counselor for 445 students there, which exceeds all the recommended ratios. And there is 1 social worker. Whereas at LMS and at CHS, they have the mental health clinician. We're also seeing an increased need for mental health services at GMS. And Principal Mitchell is framing it as a mental health / counselor position. So, it would not be as, in the same way as what we're seeing at the high school or at the middle school, but we need additional support staff, or staff in the counseling department at GMS.
So, go ahead, Karen.
So this wouldn't be alleviated by filling current unfilled staffing positions? We need to add a new position. So we're not fully staffed, so we need a person. So could we not just solve our problem by hiring the person that, to the vacant position we already have?
This
Or do
role
we
doesn't
truly
exist though,
need-
does it?
Which vacant?
I thought you said we don't have staffing filled at GMS.
Oh, like paraprofessionals, custodians, yeah, those are,
Okay.
This position doesn't.
we don't have
currently
unfilled counselor or
Gotcha.
mental health clinician
So,
roles.
maybe to summarize this piece here, and correct me if I'm wrong, the only 2 positions here that are what I guess I classified as a kind of a net new increase are the IT technician and the mental health clinician. Is that a true statement?
In grade one,
And 1 grade 1 teacher.
there's 3 of them.
And 1 grade 1 teacher. Yeah, I know. But I don't view, I guess in my logic, yes, that is a net new, but I don't view that as we're adding a new position.
We are though.
But you are.
You are.
You are.
But in fairness, they
We
removed one a
added
couple
one
years
this
ago 'cause
year,
we're
and
so
we're
now
asking
they're
for
adding
another
it
one
back
next year.
because we're holding
Yeah,
it up.
but it's not a new role. Like the IT technician, we're adding a new.
A new role altogether, I see what you're saying.
Correct. That's my logic in my head.
It is a
Maybe I
new
didn't
person
articulate that well.
that we don't have
Correct.
in the
I agree
budget
with
today.
that. Yes.
But to your point, those teachers always fluctuate with.
Correct. Yeah. So that statement's accurate
No.
with Andrew's.
If
side.
you're moving them between grades, that's not so much the need for maybe a warrant article, but a new position, yeah, the teacher grade 1 is a new position. You're taking a 2nd grade teacher and moving it up to 3rd, that's fine, that's just a shift. But a new position coming in, it should go
It's
to
not
warrant.
necessarily a new position though, because that position was there probably 2 or 3 years ago. We removed it because we didn't need it at the time,
Yeah.
but now we need it again,
Well,
because
it's
the
no
enrollments went back
it's
up.
no, we'll use a police officer,
Yeah,
okay? Every single one you're hiring right now, you're not going to warrant.
no, but if we had removed a police officer from our line and then tried to bring one in a couple years down the road, yes, that would go to warrant, or I
But
wouldn't support the
The way
budget.
the police officers leave, no different than teachers. They go somewhere else.
Yes,
So
but
then you
Brian,
replace
you're
them.
adding a
They
new one.
replace teachers.
You're adding a new one.
Where it really went off the rails is when we changed the policy and added a kindergarten teacher by changing the policy. That's what's creating a new position. But that's like.
I hear your logic, Bob. I think differently about it, and I think about it in the sense of those positions do fluctuate up and down. I look at the other two that I specifically mentioned is we are adding services per se and new roles, and that's why I look at those differently than the first grade.
Well, we all have a variety of different views, and
We
that's
do.
what makes this committee wonderful.
And that's why, like I said, I knew I was opening a can of worms, but I felt like it was a good time to have a healthy discussion on it. So
Discussion's good.
discussion is good.
Well, I think if,
Go ahead.
I think if,
But I can't find a driver now.
we're basing the number of positions on enrollment, then if special ed has a higher enrollment, then we need more special ed teachers. I don't see why that would go to warrant.
Which one?
Same with, the mental health clinician,
It's a new position.
because of the necessary services that we.
That has nothing to do,
New
but
position,
doesn't
Kate.
sound like it's necessarily tied to that. Like, there's children without special needs that need a mental health clinician. I don't know that it's actually tied to increase in special needs, other than we have a bunch of kids who have gone through a lot of stuff in the past couple of years. So I actually might support this one if it's put it in correctly.
I mean, you could make the argument, and Chris did, that the IT technician is driven by the fact that they've increased devices, and I don't disagree with his logic behind that, but it doesn't change my opinion that I think we should let the voters approve it.
Especially, I think that we need to err on the side of transparency. So I think putting it into the warrant article, at least to have the conversation, shows that we're erring on that side.
And
Brian,
Go
to
ahead.
your point, during the town, you brought up, and you found it, and I gave you full credit for it and thanked you, a part-time police officer that we had pulled out a couple of years ago, that was tried to be put back in, right? And
As
we got it pulled. Correct? Am I right? So there's no difference between that and this. There was none.
But that part-timer, you explained to me, was a new position.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. It was two part-timers that they made into a new position. They combined them because they retired, and they brought in they made one new officer position out of it. Then the chief this year, who didn't know, wanted to bring back that part-time position, and he can't do that without going to warrant article, because he's adding a new
You
position.
eliminate the full-timer, and then you bring in two part-timers.
We eliminated two part-timers, too.
I mean, the reality is, if you go back to the original warrant article, it says increase hours too. So, I
It
mean,
doesn't matter. It's
It's
just,
just-
it's new.
And it's advisory.
and it's all
But
in your
but it
personal
was-
interpretation.
It was actual, though.
Yes.
So one final question from this on me. I know during the firehouse presentations, there was talk of two other positions. They didn't make those into this budget, correct? There was the instructional coach, and there was another one.
The
That,
assistant to the special ed director.
correct,
Right.
yeah, that was it.
Did
Those
not-
are not in the budget,
They are
right?
not in the budget,
Okay,
and the board did not vote to put those in.
okay. I
We
just
still
wanted to-
have those, we could still talk about those.
No,
but
I
they're
just
not
I just
there.
wanted to clarify
If
because
you wanna add them, we're more than
No,
happy
I
to
was
have
not
the
suggesting
conversation,
that. I
JD.
wasn't suggesting that. I just wanted clarification. I remembered it from the presentation. Didn't see it here. Just wanted to close the loop
So
on
those
that.
could be warrant articles, because
It could be.
those
yeah.
are new
I would
positions.
agree on those as just like the other two that I discussed. As I would see those as warrant articles as well. Yeah.
Why is the mental health clinician / counselor salary higher than the other teachers? Are they not on the same collective bargaining agreement?
Probably has to do with good luck finding one. Supply and demand.
We had a couple extra days. Is that- did we
Yeah,
work
there-
5 extra days?
I also think when I look at salary, Holly is picking somewhere in the CBA for that. Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry, they are not covered by the CBA.
Oh, okay.
So we have to hire based on, those are non-union positions. And what we found this year is that in order to attract people, that was a salary that was necessary. So that's how she based that. And, you know, even the teacher one is tricky because she's picking like an average of what we predict.
Yeah.
It could come in at the same amount.
All right, any final questions for salary and benefits tonight?
I just realized I was mistaken. No, I do think that special education, if there's more kids that need special education services, I don't see why that has to go to warrant. If there's more kids that need a kindergarten teacher, that it wouldn't have to go to warrant. I see that as, it should be tied to enrollment, but that's just my personal opinion.
Well, if we have a bump in population and we need to add a new full-time firefighter and new police officer, should that go to warrant?
I would not argue with you. I think that's the Board of Selectmen's purview to grow
Well, I'd
the
argue with you.
services with the town.
I'd argue with you, and I wouldn't support the budget if it didn't.
That's fine.
All right.
Very clear about that.
We're gonna move to, let's see, food service salary. Because we did food service non-salary earlier, so we're gonna do food service salary, which is 2510, no, yeah. Food service fund 21. Mr. Totten, were there any changes to this one?
Just the decrease due to health insurance going from 10% to 6.2%, which brought it down 4,427.
Okay, I see that, thank you. Any questions? So this, with that decrease, this budget is up approximately $13,800 from last year. Questions on food service salary? You had a question.
benefits.
You had a question earlier that was captured, Mr. Leary.
Thank you.
Yep.
So is this factored into the cost when we charge for food? Like, is it the entire food services? It's not just the cost of the food, it's actually the cost of the
It's the
people?
entire.
Right.
Yep.
And to your point, the board has got to have a conversation about the self-funding notion. There are districts that provide the personnel and then say the food portion has to be the self-funding, right? So they separate that off. We don't do that. We have it all lumped together. And so the question is to, it's like you're asking us to run a nonprofit restaurant, I guess, to have it be cost neutral, where all the costs, labor, food, et cetera, is all factored in. So it's really difficult to compare this to other districts because people take different approaches. Each town has a different way of viewing it.
Other questions on food service salary? Okay. Brian, you said there was one more that I had missed.
General fund.
Legal.
General fund.
General fund, why do I not see that?
Does it not
I'm
have
not
that?
sure.
Did it
what
have
the-
its own separate spreadsheet or no?
Legal's in the SAU.
Is in general fund the whole budget?
General fund is everything but
Yeah,
the
it's
food service.
116
fund.
pages, yeah, so I think that, and legal was under
SAU.
SAU, yeah. I think we've covered them all. Please, somebody correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe we have.
I've hit every tab in my binder.
All right.
Well, it's listed as general fund on the top. Where the, Sam, that's why,
Oh, right.
And
And
it's
that's the school board one, which is lumped in.
Did we go through building and grounds?
We did.
I don't remember seeing school board actually.
We did not,
think we
school
just
board
did it
wasn't on here.
Said it briefly, it was 16.
It got
I
rolled
thought we
in.
did.
Which was it?
It's in SAU, I think.
I would, yeah, I thought
Right.
we-
That's
Go
part
to your
of-
business tab.
JD, I think that's part of
School board and
SAU.
business.
Part of
I think
SAU.
it's there.
School board, yep.
Along with
Um,
legal services, we were talking about $60,000.
Or is it under, yeah, I remember looking at it, no, that was salary and
So
benefits.
school board's under,
Business.
Business, right?
Business, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It used to have its own, I think.
Yeah, I
It
did.
did.
Yeah, it just didn't get broken
Okay,
out
I
here.
see it now, yep.
First key.
So we did look at that as a part of business.
We can't even see Andrew's salary, is that under salary and benefits?
That was under salary and benefits, just him and Matt's, yep, the only two.
on the new one, you won't see his name though.
All right, any final questions
Personal
tonight?
information being shared here.
Yeah.
Any final questions tonight for Dr. Jetty or Mr. Totten?
Well, I think we need to discuss under the capital improvement planning, the letter that went out, so sure.
We'll do that with school updates, which
Yeah, no,
we'll
I'm saying, but I
close-
think, I don't know who sent the letter, so if it was a superintendent or school board letter, whoever it was.
board.
All right, well then, we're good then.
So I
So-
do have one comment and then
Budget, are we budget? Are we still budget?
budget
Okay.
related,
Yep.
yes, and then quote-unquote question. So, Dr. Chetty, you said in the beginning in regards to, Delivered on time, absolutely. And I'd like to pass on thanks to each of your departments who did a fantastic job, really put in the time and effort to make those two meetings very, very beneficial. I remember what it was like before when each department had to come in here and, we were here long hours and it was painful. So they did a fantastic job, and pivoting to that format has gone a long way as to why many times it was, any questions, Bueller. So please thank the staff for all the work
I will
that they
pass
did.
that along, and I'm sure they're watching.
And then Doug, I mean, to say that this is transparent is an understatement. What I've seen as far as the difference in the second year now that you've been doing this is absolutely phenomenal. I really, really appreciate all the, extra effort. You could just sit there and print me out a copy of the budget and tell me to, keep updating it myself. You're giving us constant updates. You're giving us additional spreadsheets that really explain what changes are being made, how it's differing. So I really appreciate the collaboration there in terms of giving us, maybe sometimes a little too much information, but that's okay.
No, we're
So
trying to
thank you
balance
very
it,
much.
so.
It's
yeah.
been fantastic.
I'll echo that. I agree. I think we met in June or July and talked about, feedback, at least since I've been a part of the budget committee, is can we get the budget earlier? Can the budget committee have more time? I appreciate that we've had, here we are 3 weeks of having it. And I think Scott, thank you. I was getting ready to call you Doug.
That guy.
To Scott's point.
Really? You had to throw that word. That's my trigger word.
I think to Scott's point is
Some nice
tonight
pretty
was
ones going in.
efficient because of those joint sessions, right? And I think, those of us that were in attendance, who watched them virtually, like the questions, there've been questions in the Google Doc, there's more there now. I think it's, the process continues to get better each year, so I appreciate that.
And then my question is kind of to the three of you, and it's a high level question. Look, the budget is going up. Clearly, the needs of the students in the district is pivoting, where we're seeing a lot more special education need, and you have zero control over not offering those services. CTE has gone up quite a bit over the last few years in terms of take rate and enrollment. Transportation, unfortunately, you know what? You live off of a good deal for so long, sooner or later you gotta pay them in, and now all of a sudden we have transportation. So, and then obviously, salary and benefits is going up, and there's no way around it. There's no way around New Hampshire retirement, things of that nature. So my question is, how do you balance a budget that is going this way in those departments that I've highlighted, like a rocket ship, but you're still trying to offer a depth and breadth of curriculum and services this way, also with a dwindling enrollment? At what point, when we sit there and take a look at potentially a 5% increase on the town, a 5% increase here, we saw what the feedback was when the tax bills went out this time. How do you solve for the equation of going this way and finally trying to do something to curb the rate of increase, but yet meet the needs of the students? And it doesn't need to be answered today, but that's the train that I see coming down the ton, is we can't live like we live in the past. Brian's made fun of me before about trying to cut AP classes, but you know what though? If you're taking, let's say, 20 more special ed students, that their spend is going this way, and now I only have 2 or 3 kids, and meanwhile we've expanded the AP program quite a bit since, 2017, 2018, where now there's a lot more courses being offered with less students taking each of those. How do we start to put together that equation that says, look, everybody's got to give a little. I can't offer all this because I have to offer all this. And that's what I would like to see, or at least I hope you understand that when we get to votes and I start cutting, that's my reason for cutting overall, is that it can't go this way and that way with less kids.
And what's unfortunate that's going along with that is the lack of revenue. that we're getting from the state. It goes down and down and down.
Well, that's partially tied to declining enrollment though, right? We have fewer kids overall, you're gonna get less money.
Yeah, but it doesn't correlate, what less we're getting and less students.
Right.
There's less aid coming from the state
There is,
for
but there's
education.
also, then it's compounded by the fact that we have fewer heads to get that dwindling aid for.
Right.
So
But I
sure,
think
it's
that's just a small
compounded.
part of, right. What we need is representatives who are gonna help us out in our schools.
Not gonna be solved here, you're welcome to run.
Not gonna happen with the current representatives.
Correct.
Let's be
Different conversation, different time.
I think, Mr. Taylor, just to answer at least part of your question, right? I mean, I think the board has taken action through the attrition cuts, through looking at open positions. We have had discussions about the new positions being in the budget. We have reduced the bus contract from 9 to 8 in order to offset some of that price increase while still maintaining the same level of service to the students and getting them to and from where they need to be on time, right? So I think we are trying to take a hard look at that in terms of curriculum and how the programs are being offered. You know, I know we are being creative in like AV schedules and offering different classes at different times. And, you know, we talked a lot about increasing the CTE program, which seems like a great program that more students are taking more advantage of. And that's actually beneficial to us as a district because of offsetting revenues that come into the district to offset some of that cost. So, and while providing even greater opportunities to the students that we can't offer in this district. So I think we are having some of those conversations, but your point is on. I mean, you're right, cost is going up. It's going up for, in most of the cases, factors that are outside of our control. And we're trying to do what we can to minimize that. But I don't know if there's another top of mind response from.
Well, I hope it's not lost on the budget committee that we have been making some cuts. If you look over the last 5 years, we have cut positions. We've really been pretty clinical at looking at where our staffing is, where the student population is, and as the population has shifted and changed, we've made those cuts. We just haven't kept positions on because we've had them. We've made the cuts. Unfortunately, this is sort of like one of those collision pieces where student needs have increased in ways that aren't reflective of a population change, and so we need to meet that. And so the admin team this year, when we've done a lot of work, we started really in August with budget development and trying to figure out what goals we had. And we worked pretty closely to say, you know, we've got to come in and we've got to articulate what those needs are. And we put the board in the position, frankly, of this is where we are, this is what we're asking for. You have to be the arbiters of the budget and the taxpayers, because that's why you're elected to the school board. We know the roles that you've been elected into. But it's as educators, we want to meet those student needs. So finding the right balancing point and tipping point on this is going to be a team effort.
Yeah, so during the budgeting process, the admin and the directors wanted their voice to come forward to everybody, where sometimes before, rightfully so, it was cut as we formed the budget because there's just been different factors that have occurred each year where you needed a lean budget. Now those factors have resulted in the per pupil cost for Litchfield being pretty low if you compare it to other schools in the state. So they wanted a chance to present what they felt they needed. They did a great job of putting together the budget. Sometimes I was predicting that they might ask for a little bit more in certain areas, which they didn't, because I think they still have that viewpoint of the whole town in mind. They also have the viewpoint that, if they ask for something, they might get it this year, they might get it next year, type of thing. But they wanted to get that out there because there are some changes, needs of the students that we're receiving. And they do want to make sure that those students' needs are being met, but then also that the stress that sometimes that results in multiple teachers, if we're talking about the mental health clinician at the elementary school, can be more shared. So they wanted that voice. They did a good job with their voice, but I think they're realistic too, that at the end of the day, it's a budget which is mainly paid by the town. It's not paid by the state. It's not paid in Litchfield. It's not paid by a big commercial base. It's paid by the taxpayers. And that's difficult because some of the costs that they didn't ask for we have to absorb because the bus company, 5-year contract is now due type of thing. So we're absorbing the jump that they had to make in order to compete with CDL drivers, as the bus drivers are mostly. I think the main thing that we were hoping for was a voice, and for that to be heard. And then we know that there's gonna be tough decisions by the school board, which made decisions, by the budget committee, and then ultimately by the town. So I think as we made this budget, the voice was there, but I don't think any of us thought that it wouldn't be cut in certain ways, whether that be a position or a line, or, or multiple. We have that voice out there.
How much, the federal government's supposed to be paying some of special education. I know they don't pay as much as they're supposed to, but I guess roughly, do you know roughly what percentage they are paying at this point? Like how much did we get last year, for example, do we know?
I'd have to look into that. So there's special education per every kid who's on an IEP, which I think maybe it's bumped up by around 2,000. But then there's also special education aid, which when a student is 3.5 times the average cost is about 19,000. Then anything over 3.5 times, up to 10 times, they pay 80%, we pay 20%, and then over 10 times the cost, which I don't think, we don't have students over 10 times the cost, they pay, so we would pay the first 3.5 times, then we'd pay 20% from 3.5 to 10, and then they pay everything over 10. So as we have more students go into out-of-district placements, which involve transportation as well, the revenue does increase. But the revenue it's two things. It's the next year that we receive the revenue, so we don't receive it in the same year that the expenses occur. And it has a possibility of being prorated. So and I'm gonna use really small numbers, just so we don't have to say big numbers. So if like the whole state was saying, you owe us 10 million, but the state could only pay 9 million, well, then everyone's prorated that 10% type of thing. So what we thought we'd get lower. So when we project out what the revenue is gonna be, we can't project out we're gonna get 100% because we don't know. But when we do have a student who goes in out-of-district placement, that's new, we would be receiving more revenue the next year.
So some of this offset in special ed would be refunded to us, but 2 years later, basically.
Yeah, so I think this year, I think we're putting around like 124,000 for special ed aid, which is different than that 2,000 per student, where previous years we were around 40 or 60 because we have risen in that area.
There was a change in state law last year about how long a student is eligible for services, and I was checking.
Went to 21, right?
Pardon? Went from
22.
22.
From 21 through the end of being 21, which is,
22.
basically 22.
End
And we've gotten how much reimbursed on that?
Well, we're not sure. So it's also a lengthy process. So we had our expenses last year. We get them into the state in July, what we believe we qualify for. We hear back sometime in November or December, like, well, nope, that student wasn't on the bus for these 3 days, so we're gonna deduct that. Back and forth with the state. And
A nickel and dime.
And then
I brought this up for a reason.
we tend to get the check around May. So we're in that process now for the expenses for last year.
And I'm just saying, because, we always hear about the unfunded mandates, and here's one of those.
They fund it, it's just late coming to you.
No, it's not even
Partially
close.
funded.
Like a year later.
It's supposed to be like 60%, and I don't think they've ever crossed 32% kind of thing, or 29%. It's significantly under.
All right, well, putting a bow on the budget process for tonight. So
Can I just ask one more question? Sorry.
I'll take my bow off.
Sorry. So you have this tab for main budget drivers. I'm just wondering if, as the default budget is developed, if we could put a line in there about other contracts. So we have like the transportation contract increase, but there's also been smaller increases by all the other contracts by like landscaping, things like that. I just wonder how much those add up.
No, so we're working on the default budget, but not every contract makes its way into the default budget. And only part of the transportation contract will make it in, because it has to be by law. So by law, we don't have to transport for sports, for co-curriculars. So any of the increase for that doesn't make it in the budget. We do have to transport for pre-K through 8, and obviously special ed. So we don't, by local policy, we have to transport for high school. And by local policy, I think we're within a mile of the school, but for state policy, it's 2 miles of the school. So what we did last year, which I plan on carrying forward this year, is we went up by the default budget by, if it's going by what's required by law, we did two-thirds of the increase for the regular ed transportation. So, and then the transportation that's tied to IEPs, student with IEPs, that went up 100% because we have to do that.
Required by law.
Yeah, but not all of it, and not like if the copier lease goes up, that doesn't impact the default budget. So default budget, things that are required by law, and what we believe is required by law is that we need to heat the building, we need to light the building. So last year we went up in costs on the default budget. Well, if we go down in costs, we go down in costs in the default budget too, because it's fair is fair, right? So
Thank you.
This
'Cause we've
year,
had people, but BAs in the past not do that, so I appreciate that.
so this year you'll see a reduction in the default budget because we're budgeting, because we have a contracted for lower rates for next year.
Okay.
So
I'm just wondering if you take the other smaller individual contracts, if they would add up to an amount that was worth putting on this main budget driver tab. Like landscaping contracts, all the smaller, relatively smaller increases.
I don't know.
But maybe they really aren't a huge driver.
They're not huge,
Okay.
as much as the transportation, so, yeah, or, some of the contracts that have gone up have been part of the professional services for special ed as well, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And teachers up this year?
Teachers' increase will be its own warrant article when a deal has
Special-
been,
The support staff's not up
It
this
is,
year,
right?
right?
It's contract.
support staff is not up there.
We're negotiating with LEA teachers.
Okay. We'll be
Okay.
seeing that pretty soon.
I'll put my,
To her
ahead.
point, though, it might be interesting to know how much of the increase is due to the support staff, just our contract increase though, right? Like, that might be another $50,000 or so.
as far as the main budget driver.
Yeah.
That's what I'm wondering, if they, like, printer contracts, it might be $1,000 here and there, but if you have so many of them. it
Yeah,
may
and
add
some
up.
of our contracts, we were able to keep the same. We had a printer that stayed the same, I think, and then waste management for trash removal, that went down from about $745 per month, per school, I think, to $610. So, although we've mainly seen increases, there have been some decreases in there as well.
Thank you.
So I was just gonna ask in preparation of the next meeting where Scott brought the point, can we get a listing of all courses at both LMS and CHS and how many students are at each?
You want class enrollments, Brian?
Yep. Like, how many kids are taking Spanish 2? How many kids are taking computer science? Like those, right?
How many kids are taking pottery or?
Exactly. Like,
Hey, I
the
took
course
pottery.
offerings and how many are in
No,
each
I'm
one.
just, same thing with the middle school, because
still
there's
have a
also
mug. It
electives
looks
at the middle
Pottery's
school.
required class, you need 1 credit of arts.
We have a
Like it,
report
we
that
do.
shows,
And I realize that's this year's numbers, it's not next, the following year's numbers, but it'd be interesting just to take a look at,
Yep.
to your point, you're giving an AP course, there's 2 kids in it?
Yeah, because AP, for example, has gone from, it used to be A-push was your only option at Campbell back when
Yeah.
our daughters were
You're capturing that in the Google
in
Doc.
there, and now all of a sudden it's A-push, Gov, and then like another one.
So wait, there's only 2 kids taking like an AP. We're not pushing kids into
there are
AP?
no AP classes with 2 that I'm aware of.
No, well,
Just to clear the air here.
no, I
will get
think
you the
there's,
enrollment.
I just think there should be
3,
more
but-
kids in more AP classes.
That's
So I'm
calculus.
like,
All right,
if we only have
That's
2,
definitely
we're not pushing it enough.
wrapping up our budget conversations for tonight. We just, for the public's sake, anybody who's still watching, we do not meet next week. It's Thanksgiving, obviously. Our next budget conversation will be on Thursday, November 30th, and we have 2 meetings scheduled to do voting on the school budget. So that's November 30th and December is that 6th, 7th? So those are our next 2 meetings for voting on the school, so. All right. All questions, everybody should have the link to this document because I shared it with you earlier. Questions or follow-up items that Dr. Jetty or Doug or anybody from the team have are captured in that Google Doc. So keep an eye on that, and I'll keep an eye on it as well over the next week and just send everybody a reminder once those answers get in there. All right, moving on in our agenda, we'll stay with school business general updates. Mr. Cutter.
No updates to share this evening.
Really gonna go with that one?
Okay. All right. So last night, actually yesterday, there was a press release issued by the school. This is really the only update that I'll have to share this evening. I think probably everyone on this board has seen or heard of it. I will not read the full press release, but I will read the first paragraph of the press release because it's the general summary. Litchfield, November 15, 2023. It is with deep disappointment that the Litchfield School Board announces that the purchase of the land across from the fire station on Albuquerque Avenue for a new elementary school will not occur. The voters approved the purchase of this land in March of 2023. Despite efforts by the school district, the seller of the land on Albuquerque Avenue has communicated that the land is no longer available for sale. With this, and the rest of the press release talks about, obviously, our continued deep disappointment, but our pivot to exploring land that is owned by the school district and our continued progress towards marching towards March of 2024 for a warrant article, taking advantage of state aid that we're anticipating being somewhere in the ballpark of $7 million. So,
I have a question on that.
Yeah, before we get into too many discussions around this, I know this is gonna come up during the warrant article, so certainly I wanna be respectful of the clock tonight. I want everyone has an opportunity to ask questions tonight. I don't wanna go too far down the hole in this, cause I know this will come
Oh, no,
up
I have a,
during our warrant article conversation. So, Phil, go ahead, Ms. Douglas.
I am disappointed in paragraph 3, which implies that the budget committee had unanimous consensus that the long-term best solution was to construct a new building on a new site. I believe that, so one of the things one of the reasons why I was very cautious about supporting putting a budget committee member on these subcommittees was the concern that the view of one person would be construed to be the view of everyone. So it feels to me like the school board took the personal opinions of someone and distributed them amongst the rest of us. I don't think there is a unanimous consent decision amongst this board as to whether or not there should be a new project on that site, and I take issue with how it's worded. As such, quite frankly, I don't know that the budget committee should continue to put somebody on the committee if we're going to take people's individual personal opinions that do not represent this committee and publicly state them as such. When I am sitting on the CIP committee for the town, I am very careful to not speak on behalf of this committee. There are opinions that I don't agree with that I sit back and say, well, if that is the opinion of that organization, well, let's have that please move forward with it. I may not agree with it personally. It is not my position to speak on behalf of this committee. I am very disappointed with the wording here because I don't think it's an accurate representation. I'm not going to say it's deliberately deceptive, but it feels awfully squishy that we're saying that the town as a whole unanimously supports this project, and I don't think that's accurate.
So I hear what you're saying, and I think the way I read that was it was saying that the Facilities Improvement Committee had unanimous consensus, and that committee was comprised of the select board, the budget committee.
Shouldn't be voting on that. We're a non-voting member.
The voting members of Facilities Improvement were unanimous.
But the budget committee is not a voting member of that committee, so they should not be mentioned as being
it just
part of
says
the-
representation.
I disagree with the wording of this. I think it sends a message that is not accurate throughout the town. And as such, quite frankly, I would move that we remove ourselves from the committee so that we aren't misrepresented in the future of our opinions.
I don't agree with that piece of it. I think the conversation around whether
So is that a motion?
I'm making a motion that we withdraw from the committee.
A motion by Ms. Douglas. Do I have a second?
Second for discussion.
Second by Mr. Leary. Discussion.
I mean, the concern originally in the past was that something like this would happen. We were supposed to circumvent it by being non-voting members of this committee. And if our presence is gonna allow the community or enable the community to feel that there's a position taken by this committee that the committee itself has not taken, we should not, our presence is not helpful.
We shouldn't be on any committees.
I would agree with you. I will if we withdraw from here, we should withdraw. But like I said, I have been very careful to make sure that my personal opinion is not invoked. Clearly, something was said in some things that allows for a position to have been taken that wasn't taken formally.
I also think it's beneficial, though, for a member of the budget committee to be on these committees so that we can bring back the information so that we're up to speed as far as where they're coming from.
Watch the video. Attend as a public member.
If I may.
You didn't watch the
speak on-
school board videos as far as the presentations. You're telling me to go watch a CIP
Okay.
meeting?
Okay.
If I could speak on behalf of the board for a moment, I don't, there was no ill will here, right? It was a matter of getting the message out to the community, and just sharing kind of the current state of where we are and where we're going and where we're working towards for March. I read this particular paragraph very similar to Chairman Son, about the unanimous consensus of the facilities improvement, but certainly, look, there's a motion and a second, it's the will of the Budget Committee.
There's a motion and a second. I'll say my thoughts on it are I lean more towards what Brian said in that I think we should have representation. However, I'm not opposed to the discussion around should they be a voting member. Because I think the parallel you can draw there is with CIP, we have representation, but we're not a voting member. And I think if we're looking at apples to apples, then perhaps that's a similar approach with school
Are we a
facilities.
voting member on this? When did that happen? Because I thought the original, when we voted to become a member of it, it was under the understanding we were not a voting member.
The years that I attended it, I was a voting member, and there was never any conversation not being a not.
Well, that is a miss on me, because there's no way in hell I would have voted for that. Because we should not be a voting member on that committee.
You might have voted against it.
I very well probably did then, because this is why. That vote that was not taken at this committee, there was no business for a vote on our behalf to be taken, because there was no official position by this committee.
Additional discussion on the motion.
I kind of agree with Kerry a little bit on this, because you know what, if you read it, this sentence, it doesn't say it was the unanimous consensus of the building, committee. It goes from select board, budget committee, and GMS staff, comma, it was a unanimous consensus that the best long-term. I can unequivocally state that our representative did never support this.
I don't think your representative was ever there, Bob.
Kevin was there because he told me, and I called him on the phone today.
He's been there for
and
like one meeting.
So then
let
he
me
couldn't
finish.
should be referenced.
I asked him point blank, did you recommend, and he said, I told them to fix, not build. That was his exact words to me.
Bob,
Okay.
this decision was made several years ago prior to Kevin joining.
I think this, I
You'd
do
have to have a
agree.
conversation with Steve.
I think these decisions were made when Mr.
I will state for the record that our board has never discussed this project. We have never endorsed this project. And I don't know that you'd like the outcome if we did take a vote on it.
So staying with the motion
At
at
some point,
hand.
we will weigh in, because it will be the largest budget item that this town has ever seen. So for us to sit on our thumbs
and-
would be inappropriate.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yes, but to put words in people's mouths, even if it wasn't intentional, there should be a retraction.
Staying with the motion at hand.
Okay.
Additional discussion on the motion about the budget committee having representation on the school facilities committee.
As I will say right now here, if we are going to remain and we are going to be voting members, we need to vote as a committee before you take a vote back. We expect the school board to discuss prior to them speaking. We expect you should not be voting on behalf of this committee without a vote at the committee.
See, I would disagree with that one. That's where I had an issue where Mrs. Hirschberger, when she was on this board, would then at that point not take a vote or a stance sometimes because she did not feel that she understood what the board wanted. That is the purpose of somebody being there. All of us can't be there. Somebody should be able to be proactive, have the conversation, understand what the will of the board is, and then vote on their behalf. I get it that there's an impromptu thing that may come up that a vote has to be taken, but you know what? The group of us are putting our faith in whoever that representative is to make the right choice that they think the will of this board
The
would have.
fact that this
A perfect
committee as
example.
a whole did not unanimously support the
Okay,
purchase.
Carrie, a
of the
perfect
committee.
Gary, that's
example.
not what I'm talking about.
Perfect
All I'm
example.
saying is that if I don't want to have somebody that basically sits there as an empty suit at this meeting and just go, well, hold on, I gotta go back to the budget committee and find out what the vote is. Like, that's not the
Yeah.
point. We don't send representatives places just to come back and ask.
But I think the role, to me, the role of a budget committee member at school facilities should be the same as the role of a budget committee member at CIP. It's to provide input, it's to ask questions, and it's to bring information back to this group to help inform them when it does come time to make decisions.
How about it's the same as, we have a selectman here and a school board member, who are voting members on the budget committee.
True,
But
but I think-
so he's representing the select board, he's representing the school board, is that any different?
Do you discuss prior to voting here as a board what your vote should be? Yes or no?
Well, seeing since we're, the vast majority of the votes on this board are about budgets.
So then yes. Mr. Leary, prior to voting here, do you discuss as a select board?
I would
how
say
to-
we don't talk about town votes beforehand. We talk about school votes.
Yeah, but you're here on the budget
And
committee.
similarly, correct.
Well, by the time we've finished our budget process, I pretty well know the direction my board wants me to take.
The reality is, the implication is that this committee as a whole endorses this project, and I don't think you can even reasonably say that that is true. Otherwise, this board committee would have unanimously supported the purchase in the first place, and that did not happen.
Go ahead, sorry.
So, to me, again, if we continue there, then yes, we should withdraw our sitting seat as a vote. We should not be voting on this committee.
Mr. Chairman, may I call a question, please?
Question's being called. We'll have to do we'll do a roll call vote with Mr. Hayes. Mr. Hayes, sorry,
Mr. Chairman, can we repeat what the motion?
I would like, my
We've
motion,
gone round and round. I lost track of
my
the
original motion is to withdraw membership of the school CIP.
no, school,
facilities?
yeah, FIC, school facilities.
Whatever it is,
Yes.
that committee.
Before we do that, Mr. Hayes, any discussion on your part before we call a question? I didn't give you a chance to speak.
No, thank you very much for checking with me. I don't feel so any of our, when we're a liaison to a different, committee, CIP, we should not be a voting member. And further, I do believe that, school representation and also the town representation on the budget committee should not be voting positions. But I do believe there's an RSA that covers that gives them, the rights of everybody else on the budget committee.
Okay. So question has been called, and just to clarify the motion, because we've had a lot of conversation around voting and not voting. This is not about voting or not voting. The motion is that to remove the budget committee from being a member of the school facilities committee. That is the motion. Roll call vote. Roll call vote. Mr. Cutter.
You start with the school, really?
Yep.
I abstain.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Miss Douglas.
Yes.
I am a no. Miss Stevens.
No.
Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. Barca.
No.
Mr. Burke.
No.
And Mr. Hayes.
I'm a no.
Motion fails 3-5-1.
I would like
Any
to,
additional motions?
yes, to withdraw our voting.
No, it should be 4-4.
No, it was,
No.
he missed it, no, it was.
It was 3-5.
Bill,
Right.
He voted no.
he voted no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Then I would motion that our member representative to the school facilities committee is advisory only and does not vote on the behalf of the committee.
We have a motion by Ms. Douglas.
I'll
Do I have a
second
second? Second by Mr. Hayes. Any additional discussion that we haven't covered already? Roll call vote. Mr. Cutter.
I will abstain.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I am a yes. Ms. Stevens.
No.
Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. Barca.
No.
Mr. Burke.
I'm sorry, if you can repeat what the motion
The
is?
motion is to
Make it
not be a voting member, to be an advisory member. So still have attendance, still have presence, not to vote on
So
anything.
wait, now I'm confused. What's a no and what's a yes?
Yes means we continue to be a voting member. No means we
Yes.
still are there but do not vote on behalf of the committee.
That is correct. Let me I'm gonna restart this whole process. Sorry. I'm gonna rephrase the motion. The motion is that the budget committee representative to the school facilities, because that is still gonna happen based on our previous vote, would be advisory and would not be a voting member of the school facilities committee. So a yes vote is saying that they are advisory. A no vote is saying that they
Maintain their vote.
maintain their vote. Okay? Very good. We will do a revote. Mr. Cutter, we'll start with you again.
I still abstain.
Mr. Leary,
A yes vote means remove.
a yes,
Means no votes.
We vote, yeah, means
a
no vote.
yes vote
then-
means no vote.
Then yes, no vote.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
I am a yes. Ms. Stevens?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Barca?
No.
Mr. Burke?
No.
And Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
That motion carries 5-3-1.
So I was gonna say, with that, what I would like to do is resign from the Facilities Improvement Committee, because if I'm just gonna be the advisory, then I'm gonna suggest everybody can just watch it on YouTube. There's no sense in me being there.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Thank you for your service on that committee.
Thank you.
Any more updates, Mr. Cutter?
No other
You
updates
should have
this evening.
stuck with your original statement.
Just,
No update.
if I may though, because, so the press release came out, that obviously got a lot of attention, but watch the board meeting, because later in the meeting, there was a pretty healthy discussion, giving us direction about what to pursue. And that's gonna very quickly go to the Facilities Improvement Committee, because in order to get a warrant article forward, we're going 100 miles an hour on project design and development. And so, Brian, we're gonna miss you, because you've got a lot of history and a lot of background. It's probably about 2 meetings worth of conversation that are gonna get this to where we need to be. So I would encourage people to tune into that part of the meeting.
I appreciate you bringing that back up, because you just reminded me that I am currently the backup to Brian. And there's zero way I can make those meetings because of the time of day that they are.
I'll take back my resignation for those 2 meetings. Then I'll resign.
Thank you. And so we will, when are those next 2 meetings, when do they end?
I just sent an invite out tonight, and so,
I'm just trying to figure out when we need to find a replacement for Brian.
Would you be would you be willing to stay on that committee
Until February?
through voting in March?
Please.
Sure.
Thank you.
What was the direction?
so an invite has gone out for Wednesday, December 6th. That was an added meeting, and then we're gonna meet the following Wednesday, the 13th.
And the next one's canceled.
No,
That
the
was
one
on
that's canceled
Thanksgiving.
is the one before Thanksgiving.
Right,
yeah.
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 But
That's
now
what
we
I'm
have
saying,
two
right, I got
back to
those.
back to
Yep.
really try to move this thing
I'm out of
ahead.
town on the 6th, so yeah, thank you.
The direction that the board has asked us to explore and what we've engaged our team around and developed a budget is to bring forth a project building a new elementary school on the current property that we own. It's GMS and LMS, it's one piece of property, but it's actually on the back portion of the GMS property. So when you are standing there and you look, you got the playground, you got the Litchfield hump, and then you've got the baseball field. The school would be on the baseball field,
Which is LMS land.
which is, it's LMS GMS. I mean,
So if that area has a high water table that prevents us from building, why is that area all of a sudden okay?
I think that's a
Stilts.
conversation for another evening.
and that's something that our architects need to explore. So, and you know this, you're in the field. So the ability to begin with a fresh look and to mitigate the water that is there is very different than trying to mitigate water on a building that's been added onto multiple times.
Sure, I also in the field, I
Still
would have gone
do
a
it.
different way.
You can still do it. Schools have done it.
Was
Okay.
that, was
Schools have
that
done it.
was that direction unanimous?
It was a unanimous
Is that a
vote.
Motion?
Yeah, it was unanimous.
Just keep
There was a
throwing
budget
it out the
approved
window.
for it last night. And, it was a vote to pursue that based on the budget, so yes.
How much money did we spend pursuing this land over here? Legal fees, surveys, all
I
this
don't
other
know that we're legally, are we legally able to, the board has that?
I'm just curious as to how much
I don't know
money
if we're
we
legally
spent on
able to
land we
share
got.
that.
We can get you a number, because I don't think there's any restriction on that.
No? I mean, I know the ballpark, is that okay to
If you know
share?
the ballpark.
The ballpark is somewhere around $60,000.
That include the
It includes
initial, like,
fees,
$5,000
it includes,
down
yep,
payment.
all of it.
Studies that were
Studies
done.
that we've done,
So we're in the hole of 60 grand on land we didn't even own to begin with.
So you still gotta do the work before you can build.
Now, I usually don't start work until I actually own the property and have deed in hand.
I mean, you're not gonna buy the property if you can't build on it.
Any additional
We'll agree to disagree.
comments, questions for Mr. Cutter, Dr. Jettie, Mr. Totten this evening?
It just seems like right now, it's just a bunch of chickens running around with their heads cut off, scrambling for somehow, some way to build a new school next year. I don't think it's prudent.
How do we,
Something fell through.
I will dispute that respectfully, right? Because I think what the board is trying to do is take advantage of a large amount of state aid that otherwise we will never be able to take
but
advantage
would
of.
we be eligible for more if we figure out that our costs have changed? Like, are we settling for 7 million if we would have been eligible for 12?
So two things are gonna happen. You're gonna take a gamble that you'll be eligible for the 12 and that other schools aren't gonna come along. The front page of the Union Leader 2 days ago talked about Manchester's building project. They're gonna hop in the queue. They have more free and reduced students than Litchfield does. They're gonna leapfrog above us. So, and the cost is gonna go up in that time period because we've seen cost escalation in construction and inflation. And so how much of the extra, if you even qualify for it, will be gobbled up by that? We've kicked this can down the road. Litchfield has kicked this can down the road for 20 years. And we are at a crisis point. We need to follow through on a project. Bob, I also will respectfully disagree. We're not chickens with our heads cut off. I've been.
You are. You've gone
part
from
of-
one piece of
Bob,
land
I'd
to
like to
another
finish,
piece of
please,
land
without
to another piece of
interruption.
land.
Like to
Go
finish
ahead.
without interruption.
Go ahead.
We have been very, very assertive in making sure that we're pursuing a proper elementary school for our children. And the fact that we have had to shift, or Andrew said pivot, I'll say it too, is stuff that's beyond our control. If we were able to pursue some of the options, if the options that we had pursued had come through, we would have been committed to those. We're now in a position where we are doing the best we can with the options that have been, I think it's 9 options that were pursued, and we've selected the best one to plug ahead.
So,
And then next week, it could be another option.
well, they're gonna do
But
what they want,
The
but
fact of the matter is if the school board that was sitting in 2014-15 had done what that lady whose picture hangs on the wall over there had promoted when we put forth the Campbell project, which was to take the $500,000 a year and put it into renovations at GMS, when that bond was paid off, you would have about $5 million into that school right now, which would have been well on the way to having that school fully renovated. But there's been a fraction in this town where there's a group that just have to have a new school, hell or high water, or die trying, and I'm gonna tell you right now, it's going to fail. It will fail.
so what my main
And you'll be back
concern,
to square one again. You
My-
could have
yeah.
been renovating that school, it could have been just about done.
my main concern is we
minimal
saw
cost.
what happened when we pushed through a project really quickly
We
last
just saw
time.
that, yeah.
I'd rather take
Hasn't been
the,
10 years.
I'd rather take the time and get it right.
Okay.
We haven't learned. And
We will have
Just
plenty,
note on that is, I'll also say shame on the budget committee for not taking that money out of the budget when they chose not to spend it on renovations.
We tried.
That should have been pulled off of right out of the budget,
all right,
right
we'll
out
have,
of the top, because now, the way I see it, the school owes the town about $5 million.
we will have plenty more time for this discussion when the warrant articles come to us in
It's just
January.
dishonest.
Chairman Sonnen, if I may, because I think it's a really important budget committee question that we didn't talk about last night at the school board meeting, but we probably should have. And I know we can answer it. What happens to the $497,000 that's aside, right? Because that's going to be a pressing question that everyone's going to be asking.
Yeah, so we right now are waiting for legal to get back to us on that answer. So if you take a look at the warrant article that the voters supported last year, we created a non-lapsing allocation. The only way it lapses is if the land is not purchased by 2029, then the money comes back to the taxpayers. So our legal is working with DRA to see if there's some way to
Can we dissolve it?
unring that bell or have it dissolve quicker. And there's a public policy question that, first of all, Litchfield, this is the first time this has ever happened. So they're like, what do you mean they're not buying the land? So, so we're sort of in uncharted territory and we have to work with DRA on what will be allowed. And so I can assure you that our attorneys are making effort to do that.
Would that be a? Oh, never
That'd be
mind.
another Litchfield law.
No, I was just, I don't want to open the can of worms on that. Anyways, anything else?
Well, if I remember the warrant article, you'd have to still name the new school the Robin Riley Elementary School, because that was stated on the warrant article.
No, on that land.
On that land.
Yeah, it was tied to the land.
For the purpose of building a new elementary school.
On that
land.
Build a
On
new
the land,
elementary school.
on that land.
Yeah, but it was tied to the land. It was.
Might get some flack on that one, too.
Oh, they'll be
All right.
flack no matter what.
We're gonna move to member input, new business, school facilities.
Didn't meet.
What was that?
We didn't
meet. Yep. Capital improvement.
Met with the planning board, I believe, right? And they're gonna be doing their public hearing soon. I believe it was noticed, was that? I didn't go to the public hearing, the planning board meeting.
It hasn't come up with my word. I think that's.
Excuse me, surprise?
I gotta do this for the 24 hours.
What?
That
was you?
Yeah.
So the next steps with the capital improvement plan, so the planning board has not seen it yet.
I thought they were meeting yesterday.
The 21st.
21st, all right.
Yeah, is when we'll see it.
They did it to the board of
And
selectmen.
then it goes from the planning board to the board of selectmen. Is there a date scheduled for
Yeah, they
that?
were noticing that for the,
Not that I know of.
She
There
was
is,
supposed to.
it is, your meeting on, November 27th.
yes.
So that is when the plan will be presented to the
Yes,
board of
because they,
selectmen.
yes, they
Yes.
wanted to take the extra 2 weeks or an extra week or whatever it was.
So, yeah,
It's in the
going to
works.
Planning board next week, board of selectmen the following
I
week.
thought that was this week.
Okay.
I would've been here by myself.
Energy committee, to no one's great surprise, I have not been in attendance. But what I will tell you is there is a public hearing that is being held on November 28th, that has to do with, thank you all.
Good night.
Thank you, Doug.
That has to do with, the proposed, I'm trying to find it, recommendations that are coming from the Energy Committee. So there is a public hearing being held on November 28th at 7 PM over at the fire station. So for anyone who wants to catch up on what I've been unable to update you on, please tune in to that meeting. And with that, I will open it back up for public input. Seeing none, I will close
Thank you,
public
Mike.
input. Thanks, Dr. Jettie. And before I make a motion to adjourn, just remind everyone that our next committee meeting is on Thursday, November 30th, is when we will start school voting. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Motion by Ms.
Second.
Douglas, second by Ms. Stevens. Quick roll call vote, Mr. Cutter.
Aye.
Mr. Leary.
All right.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I'm an aye. Ms. Stevens.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Mr. Barca.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Aye.
Mr. Hayes.
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0-0. We are adjourned. Everyone have a great Thanksgiving holiday and a good evening.
Gobble.